Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 243. Thanks so much for joining me. Today's guest is Richard Garcia. He'll be here in a few minutes, but before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry and know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. You know, subscribing is free on YouTube. I realize some people might not know. You don't have to pay to subscribe. So just click that subscribe button. All it means is that you get little notifications when the videos come out, and that's always helpful. And do click that like button because it helps poetry spread around the internet. On Facebook or after the fact, leave reviews on iTunes. Whatever you do to help spread poetry would be much appreciated. Now, as always, we're going to start out with our Poets Respond poem. And today we got the honor of having a translation straight from Ukraine. And the poet couldn't be here because of a prior commitment. But it's a wonderful translation of Dmitry Blizniuk's poem. And Dmitry's been writing poetry live from the front lines in Ukraine for years. And sharing them here is always a pleasure. It's the second poem from Dmitry that we've ever published through the Poets Respond series. And this is a longer poem, but it's a wonderful one. I look back at what the translator says. The translator is Yana Kane, and she had this to say about the poem. Week after week, month after month, year after year, I hear about Russia's relentless attacks on Ukraine. Kharkiv is a city that has been subject to especially vicious bombings. Yet each time the citizens of Ukraine, the citizens of Kharkiv, respond with resilience and courage. Each time they push back the darkness with their love of life. One of the ways I express my solidarity with them is by translating contemporary poetry written by Ukrainian authors. Dmitry Blizniuk is the Kharkiv poet who chronicles the city's suffering and the indomitable spirit. Note that we are being freed of freedom in our lives is reference to Putin's claim that he started the war in order to defend the Russian-speaking population of Ukraine against the discrimination by the Ukrainian government. So that is the topic of this poem. Let's sit back and listen and enjoy this poem. And I should say it's being read by the translator. So here we go.
Переведи меня на марсианский, через черную ночь, где приклад до звезды достает. Translate me, render me into the Martian tongue, across the black night, where the gunstock reaches the star, beheaded houses hum in the gloom. The neck vertebra of the torn staircase is exposed. Moonlight is bitter like the sap of killwort. Lord, translate my words. We have not been born yet, but died already. The evil sorcerer in his bunker gave the order to annihilate all Ukrainians, to burn all forms of memory, of life. He poured a bucketful of flash drives into a bonfire. Our days are melting in the flames. Masses of memories of the universe. I was young, and once in the village I went diving into the river after a running start. Rebar rods stood hidden under water, sharp, rusted spikes. The wooden fishing dock rotted away long ago. For hours, I chucked myself into the black river. In the morning, girl, look here. You're covered with scratches on the legs, stomach, arms. I was insanely lucky back then. Will I be lucky this day? Readers, refugees, we pick the books off the shelves and knock at every book's cover. The classics. Let us into your paper worlds, Ray Bradbury, Sholokhov, Leo Tolstoy. But no matter where I poke, it's all for thee the bell tolls. I end up in war and insane peace, in slaughterhouse number. Now the reality of our life is Valley of the Red Data book. Now, every city is served the cocktail Bloody Vlad. Crimson yolks float in dense murk over the booze of events. Bombs gnaw at houses, schools, kindergartens, hospitals, churches. We are being freed of freedom and of lives. The howling of sirens glides foreboding air raid alarm. Here comes flying a purple swan with his head ripped away. The dawn, a gray-blue big-headed infant resembling a shrimp. Labored breathing, pneumonia. Because of nights in the basement, a baby bird of mucus made its nest in the lungs. Yet another artillery barrage, a rocket blasted an apartment in a skyscraper. A conflagration, devil's retrospective. Mom and the elder sister in the kitchen are killed instantly by the explosion. Black, thick smoke pours out of the corridor, billows, burns a child's eyes. It's not smoke-like, but black cotton candy. The cat, named Buttercup, is the first to tumble down to the asphalt from the 7th-story window ledge. 13-year-old Misha follows him, leaps like a kitten onto the enormous spire poplar planted 3 meters away from the balcony. Dry, slender branches break beneath the small body, crackle. It's as if he's falling into an empty well. Inside it sprouts a stinging, biting tree. The boy Misha finds a way to snag his elbow on a thick branch at the 3rd-story level. His ribs and left wrist are broken, but he's alive. He faints. Translated, rendered safe. People in the apartments, butterflies on the broken glass panes, Apollo, sailor, swallowtail, Morphomenelaus, with shrapnel pins in their velvety backs. Slowly, slowly, they lift off from the earth, they rise together with the cement boxes. But that's impossible. The butterfly collector is surprised. How many more people will perish? How many more worlds will vanish unexplored, unnoticed, just like that, by the sorcerous wish of the Kremlin maniac? Kharkiv, 451. 2 fire engines are already on the way, carving corners. An ambulance arrives at the entrance. Imperturbable medical angels, dark red scrubs, Kevlars. Next to the car, the cat drags his back paws, crawls towards the poplar, lifts his face, screams horribly, and the ambulance driver notices stuck in the crown a child. No stranger will save the people, the close ones and the distant ones, except us, ourselves. That's why the boy Misha absolutely must survive. That's why we will win.
Yeah, and that was a beautiful poem. Translate Me, Render Me into the Martian Tongue by Dmitry Blizniuk. Translated from the Russian by Yana Kane and read too, also edited by Bruce Esrig. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest. Richard Garcia is here, so sit tight and I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Richard Garcia. Richard was born in San Francisco in 1941 and began writing in his teens. After publishing his chapbook, Selected Poems, in 1972, he stopped writing for a number of years until an encouraging letter from Octavio Paz convinced him to return to it. In 1978, he published a bilingual book for children, My Aunt Otilia's Spirits, and University of Pittsburgh Press published The Flying Garcias in 1991. His third volume of poetry with BOA Editions, The Chair, was released in 2014, and his most recent book, Porridge, won the Press 53 Poetry Prize. But he's got a whole bunch of new poems to share today, and here he is, a great poet. I just love reading his work. Here he is, Richard Garcia. Hey, Richard, how you doing?
Hi, I'm good.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. Yeah, it's great to have you on the show.
Hard poem to follow.
Yeah, I mean, that was a great one, and especially, so moving, coming from somewhere where things are happening that are very serious.
Yeah,
but I've always loved your work. I loved your Poet Respond poem, The Sublime, back in, I think, 2016 or so, too. It's always been a pleasure to share your work, and it's great to have you on the broadcast.
Okay.
Do you want to start out? Yeah, do you want to start by reading one of the poems?
Okay. I'm going to read American Gothic.
Okay.
My grandfather was the captain of a tall ship that sailed around the Horn, bearing rum and whiskey, and always, just for me, a barrel of rock-hard candy from the Isle of Madagascar. My grandfather told me stories that made me dream of pirates, nice pirates that never hurt anyone. My grandfather waved goodbye to my grandmother as his ship sailed away with the tide. My grandmother and I waited for the sails of grandfather's ship to reappear on the horizon. Tell me again, Grandma, what was the name of Grandpa's ship? It was called, she reminded me, the Constellation of Falsehoods. Okay, I lied. I never knew my grandfather or my grandmother, but I recall their picture on the wall. They appeared to be sad farmers. He was holding a pitchfork. She looked like she had just swallowed a large sour ball.
Yeah, and that was American Gothic, a great poem by Richard Garcia, who's known for prose poems like that. Richard, I've been a fan of your work, especially your prose poems, for such a long time. But I didn't know that note in your bio that we read from your website, that you wrote poetry and then had a brief period where you stopped writing.
Yes.
So can you explain, what got you into writing poetry in the first place, and then why you felt compelled to take a break, and then how you got back? So tell us that story.
Well, I started writing probably in junior high,
Mm-hmm.
and what got me going was what's always got me going. I had a girlfriend, and I wrote a love poem, and nobody could believe I wrote it because I wasn't the kind of person that wrote poems. And so that's how I started. And later on, I did get a book published with a Latino press, Quinto Sol. And this press distributed mostly in libraries. And so it was reviewed in Library Journal. And the journal said, this looks like good poetry, but I can't recommend it because I don't know if the author is Mexican or not. Of course, I'm an American, and that pretty much killed it because they distributed in the libraries. And so I kind of got tired of poetry then, so I didn't really write for years. And then Octavio Paz happened to come across my book in Jerusalem. That's where he was. Mm-hmm. And he wrote to me, and he wrote me a letter that began, Richard Garcia, you are a true and authentic poet. So and I didn't really start writing immediately, but it got me back. It took that kind of jolt to get me going.
How did he come across your book in Jerusalem? I mean, that's really interesting. How is the book distributed there?
No, he was. Yeah. Well, I had a friend who was in Jerusalem, mm-hmm. and he had the book. And he went up to Paz at a reading and said, "Here, you might enjoy these poems by this guy."
Oh, wow.
So it was a good turn from a friend of mine who lost contact with a long time ago. But that's what did it.
Yeah, it's
You know.
amazing to me that there's moments like that, in your life. For me, I was working in a group home for mentally ill adults in Rochester, New York after college, and I never expected or thought I'd be anywhere in poetry. And I submitted some poems to Rattle just because I was writing poems for fun. And I ended up talking to Stella Sue Lee, the original editor, back in 2003, I guess it was. And if I didn't do that, if I didn't submit poems that night, where she was up late because she couldn't sleep, we started emailing back and forth, I wouldn't be here, And so it's so fascinating when, those little connections that we have. Like, imagine, what would your life be like, do you think, if Octavio Paz hadn't written you that letter? Can you imagine that?
No, I can't. Yeah. But also, I'm basically self-educated.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't even have much high school. I didn't graduate from high school. I took a couple of college courses, but that was it, And so I sort of taught myself, which kind of shows every now and then. I just learned about a month ago that I've been saying the word library instead of library.
Well, so what was it that drew you to poetry? Like, why did you want to write in the first place?
Well, it was a love poem.
Mm-hmm.
It was for a girlfriend. But after that, I tried to take some courses at State College, which was in those days it was very cheap, and it was great. But instead of doing my work, I started writing. I couldn't stop. But what happened was I started having sort of visions, and I would see things, and then I had sort of these dream visions, and then the dream visions got me into writing poetry, sort of into the unconscious.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that I love about your poetry is how free all your poems feel. Say more about those visions, though. I mean, how did that? Was it a certain time? Certain things triggered that? Were you awake? Is it like sleeping?
I think I was. Well, no, it was probably some stress,
Mm-hmm.
and probably in between sleep and waking,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started having these dreams, and they were more like a vision. And I dreamt that I rolled off the bed, but I was floating.
Oh, wow.
And below me, there was this field of blue flowers, and the flowers were all trembling.
Hmm.
And it makes me think of the Blue Flower School of Poetry, in Germany. And it was sort of that entrance into the unconscious. And after that, I began to kind of dream my poems, and I became a lucid dreamer. And so I would dream. Some of my poems were just straight ahead dreams,
Wow.
and some of my poems were when you realize that you're in a lucid state, that there's things you can do to sort of gain control, but not to control the dream, but to walk through the dream. It's like walking through your own unconscious while you're asleep, but you're awake.
Yeah, that's such an amazing thing to me. My daughter, when she was like 5 years old, maybe, I told her, I don't know how it came up, but somehow I told her about lucid dreaming and told her like the techniques to get there. I've never been able to do it. Like, I think it would be really cool to do. And she, so I told her, I think that the thing that they suggest is that you think as you move. One of the things I think I told her was that as you move through any door, touch the door and say, "Am I awake or am I dreaming?" And so then anytime in a dream, you'll get in the habit of doing that. And then you'll notice that you're moving through a door, and you'll notice that, oh, wait, I am dreaming. And then you'll realize you're dreaming and you can push through into lucid dreaming. And so I've tried to do that myself, never been able to do it. But she did it like pretty quickly. And so she was lucid dreaming every night, like flying to Disneyland, which is what she wanted to do, and like playing with dragons and things. But the fascinating thing is that after a little while of doing it, I asked her like if she still, was doing it and what she was experiences she was having, and she said that she didn't get any rest, and so she sort of got tired of it because it was sort of tiring, and she woke up feeling like she hadn't slept. And I always wondered, I'd never heard that before. Did you feel the same way with lucid dreaming? And how did what was your entry into it, and what was that like? Because that's really interesting to me.
Well, what you need was what she had is you need a sort of a suggestion that something you're going to do, and you may not do it the first time, but eventually, when you realize you're dreaming, and then you're going to touch the wall, you're going to do something, Mm-hmm. My thing was I learned to focus on something. And so what I focused on was my hands. I would look at my hands. Now, your hands in a dream, if you're becoming lucid, don't actually look like your hands, and you can start to notice that everything in the dream, if you touch it, isn't solid. And so if you put your hands together, they kind of blend in together.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a clue, something you do, and working your hands, looking at your hands is a good one. Mm-hmm. And it also often, if I put my hands a certain way, I fly, and I go places. But the trick is not. It's kind of like writing a poem. You're inside the poem. You want it to go. You don't want to control it. You want to experience the poem. You don't want to impress your will on the poem. So you just kind of stride through the poem and experience it, but without shattering it. And also the difference between being awake and being asleep in lucid dreaming is nothing. And I can see why she got tired, because if you open your eyes when you're lucid dreaming, you're completely awake.
Oh, wow.
So you might try that.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting to me. So you would have these lucid dreams at night, and then when you woke up, did you keep a dream journal to remember them by? Or do lucid dreams stay longer because you don't have that, whatever it is that turns off our memory when we're dreaming?
I might have tried, but mostly I would just write. Mm-hmm. And I never really was able to use a dream journal. Mm-hmm. So I kind of write. I learned kind of to write in my sleep. A lot, not all the time. Not every poem was like that, but I learned how to remember it, or remember enough that I could retrieve it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, that's just really fascinating to me. Maybe we'll talk about that more in a bit. But let's hear another poem. What do you want to read next, Richard?
Okay. Let's see. Okay, I'll try the bag dance. And in one of my books, I have a poem, I think it's called The Chair Dance. And so this is the bag dance. And one thing I've been doing is walking my dog a lot. I have a dog, and that's kind of, it was even recommended to me by a therapist. He said, walk your dog, and take care of your dog, because I was having some problems. And so the daily walk has become, no telling what's going to happen out there when you're walking your dog. Anyway, this is the bag dance. Ever on the lookout for a plastic bag to use as a doggy bag, I spot one behind a wrought iron fence. It is a small bag, but not too small. It appears to be clean, just right. I kneel, one hand holding on to Max's leash, and put the other hand through the slats of the fence. Just then the bag catches a bit of breeze and drifts to my left, down along the fence, and stops. I stand, take a couple of steps to the left, kneel, and reach through the grate again, and the bag slides along the fence again. This goes on for a while. I am just about to grab it when Max takes an interest in a cat under a parked car and pulls me over from my squatting position just as my fingers are touching the bag. This rolls me over onto my back. I return to my feet and dust myself off and glance around to see if anyone is watching me. Never mind the bag. I start to walk off with Max. Who needs another doggy bag anyway? The bag fills with the breeze and, rising, it strokes the fence as if saying goodbye, and lifts into the air, passing right in front of my face, and I calmly reach for it. I am about to say something to Max about how the crafty hunter lets his prey come to him, but the bag pulls away from my grasp. I reach again and again. Now I snatch at the bag as if I were shadow boxing. Max is lying on his belly with his paws over his snout, as if he is thinking, what a stupid master. Enough. I walk away with Max, but the bag follows along, on my left now, shoulder height. I am not interested. If the bag wants to come along, who cares? Then the bag gets caught on the rear fender of a parked car. I reach for it, but catching a breeze, the bag slides up the car, slides across the roof of the car, down the front window and across the hood. I leap for it and end up sprawled across the hood. I calmly push myself off the hood as if lying across the hood of a parked car were an everyday occurrence for me. The bag in a tiny breeze lies wavering on the pavement just ahead of us, as if it were pretending to be wounded. The wind dies a bit, and as we walk by the bag, I try to stomp it. I miss again, and off it goes, rising, leading us on. That's the way it is, I tell Max. First you talk to yourself, and then to your dog, and then you perform an interpreted dance in the street with a plastic bag. What does my artful dance mean? Something about love, I suppose. How we don't recognize it when it is right in front of us, how foolish we look chasing it, how we try to possess it, how it angers us, how easily it sails away. Something like that.
Yeah, so I love that poem. Both I love the image of you sprawled out on the hood of the car, and then and also the way you turn into seriousness too. There's that dreamlike quality, and then your poems, very often have that surreal element to it, where you're moving through some strange landscape or something unusual is going on, and then you find the reason for doing it toward the end. And so that wonderful line about maybe it being like love is just a wonderful way to go in that poem. On our YouTube chat, Deb T wanted to know, and I wanted to know too, you mentioned you're being self-taught as a poet. How did you go about teaching yourself poetry?
Well, just by reading and writing. I just meant that I never had any, I didn't even have high school.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had rheumatic fever in high school, and I was out for a year. And then by that time, I just quit. I was getting old, and too old, just because I had failed other times in school. So how did I teach myself? By writing, by reading other writing. Reading Pablo Neruda, for instance, was a big influence. Octavio Paz, of course, was a big influence. And reading the surrealist poets.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, prose poems were not that uncommon. Nobody asked what is a prose poem. They were a lot. And basically that way. And then also one thing that influenced me is I read Alberto Rios' first book, and I saw that he was doing kind of the same thing that I had wanted to do. He was writing about family. He was writing about these funny poems, these serious poems. There was something about his poems. So I said, oh, yeah, he's doing what I wanted to do, So that kind of spurred me on, too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, this is possible. I can do this. And so I did.
Mm-hmm. Well, really quick question from Jake on YouTube. He wants to know what kind of dog you have. Asking for a friend who loves dogs, he says.
Well, my dog is a Australian kind of a sheepdog. They call him, because of his color. He's right here. Because of his color, they call him a blue heeler.
Hmm.
If he was another color, they call him a brown heeler. They call him a heeler because they nip the heels of the sheep. He's an older dog now, which is good because when he was younger, he was really difficult. They're a difficult breed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the intelligent dogs, I guess, tend to be. Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem. I want to make sure we get to a good number of them. What's next?
Okay. This one, I actually wrote a line in Spanish, which is in the poem. I woke up and wrote a line in Spanish, and I thought, oh, I'll write a poem in Spanish. And I wrote, which, I'm not that good at Spanish. I wrote the poem in Spanish using Google too. And then I wrote it in English, and I realized I liked the English better because the Spanish was, it was kind of like, well, it made certain lines sound more like demands. Anyway, it's called La Lluvia, and it's after a wood engraving. I think I sent it to.
Yeah, I have it. I'm putting it on the screen now for everybody who's watching on YouTube and Facebook. You can see the beautiful engraving. Describe it for me, if you would.
It's by Leopoldo Mendez. It's sort of supposed to be the rain. Lluvia is rain. And it's actually a wood engraving. It's a work of art. It's not a print or anything. It has a texture and has slightly three-dimensional. And it fell out of a book I bought in a secondhand store on Mexican art.
Oh, wow.
And it just fell out. And he was an artist that was, in his time and place, he was as well known as Diego Rivera and the other artists. He hung out with them, and he was well known. The reason he's not that well known now is because he was very political and public, and so many of his engravings and all his went into posters that were put on walls and wrapped around poles and things. So he didn't actually put it in the books. La Lluvia. So that's the rain. La Lluvia wants to live in your eyes instead of tears. The rain wants to kiss your cheeks, to nestle in the hollows of your collarbone. The rain wants to rest its head on your chest and find its way with you like water finds its level on its way to the ocean. The rain doesn't have to touch you, to miss you. The rain doesn't even know why it should want to etch your name in slate and bore through the granite of your indifference. La lluvia no necesita un motivo para amarte. The rain wants to kiss your hair, your eyelids, your eyelashes. The rain wants to extinguish your ashes.
Yeah, that's a beautiful poem. Again, after this wood carving by Leopoldo Mendez, La Lluvia. We'll show that one more time. And so how often do you do it? It was really interesting because we were talking about ekphrastic poetry on the show. That's the prompt for later on, the second half of the show. We're going to do ekphrastic poems about everybody's favorite piece of artwork. How often do you do an ekphrastic poem? A poem that's inspired by art, and you sent two here, which is really fun to see. So is that something that you frequently do, and how do you approach doing ekphrastic poetry?
Well, American Gothic is an ekphrastic poem, but I didn't know it was an ekphrastic poem. It didn't have that title. And it was only until I got to the end of the poem that I put in the sad farmers and the pitchfork and the sour ball, and so that became an ekphrastic poem by accident. I didn't know it was going to be ekphrastic. It just turned into one. And it's really based that, I grew up in a family that my parents had no feeling for the old country. There were pictures on the wall, but I didn't know who they were. They never told me who they were. They didn't care who they were. So I don't actually know who my grandparents were. But I used to stare at these pictures. They were probably my grandparents. So in this poem, the boy sort of makes them up is who they are. But I do write a lot of spastic poems. And La Lluvia was partly spastic, but it came to me in sleep, and then I applied it, and then I looked at the etching that I have, the wood engraving that I have, and I finished it writing it to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really interesting. Mark Grenier asks over on YouTube, I can see the surrealist influence on these poems. Could Mr. Garcia talk a little bit more about what impact surrealism has on his work? And the fact that you pull the poems up from dreams so often, I mean, that is the dreamlike state that surrealism has. You feel like you're a surrealist poet. Is that something you would say? In a similar way to a painter would be?
Yeah, but I feel that surrealism is really the language of our time. It's everywhere. We don't really think about it. You just look at a TV commercial, turn the sound off, and just look at it. There are all kinds of things happen that you would not have seen 100 years ago. I mean, so that surrealism actually, it's like it's everywhere. It's all, we just take it for granted.
Yeah,
it's part of our language.
Yeah, it's interesting too with artificial intelligence and the way you can just generate images. It's going to be even more the case. I mean, there used to be at least some kind of limit where you had to have green screens and technology to do it, and now just crank up the AI and you can have any kind of unreal landscape or background or situation that you can imagine. So I guess we're moving from the real to the surreal in a way. Yeah.
No, we already have it. We already have it. It's already there. It's just around us in so many different ways, in movies and television and advertising. It's really just our common speech. If you ask a kid, why is this knight in shining armor carrying a machine gun and flying in the air, he'd have no problem with it. But this next poem is also ekphrastic, and it's based on a bit of outsider art that was painted on a wall, which I sent you a picture of. And I no longer can find who the name of the artist was. It wasn't my computer, but it was a man. He lived in a house, and he painted the whole side of his house. And it was pretty much as I described the painting, except I don't think there was a dog. I think I put the dog in. So this is an ekphrastic poem based on a painting you would see driving across the crosstown in Charleston, South Carolina, and suddenly there's this painting on the wall. And it's pretty faded now. Black Jesus. Spain has the Black Madonna of Montserrat. Charleston, South Carolina has a Black Jesus painted on an old house at the crossroads that locals call the Crosstown, also known as Highway 17. Black Jesus wears a red bulletproof suit and a blue cape. He's got a paintbrush and a can of paint. The paint is rainbow striped, as is the brush. Looks like Black Jesus just got finished painting the rainbow. Black Jesus has a dog, Black Wolf. Black Wolf don't eat kibble. Black Wolf eats steak. The elders of the city complain, take that mural down. It's against the code. Black Jesus, also known as Super J, says, no way. The city comes with a crane to pull down the house. The house does not budge, and Black Wolf chases the crane away. Tractors come, and Black Wolf chases the tractors away. Black Jesus blesses the crosstown, blesses the traffic. He leans his ladder against the cloud. He paints an arc of words across the sky. Jesus is the only fire escape. No more water, but the fire next time. At night, Black Wolf howls at the moon, and the moon goes away. Black Jesus has his fire escape to glory, has his red Super J bulletproof suit, has his blue cape, his dog. Black Jesus can fly.
Yeah, that was Black Jesus by Richard Garcia. Another wonderful poem, and we'll pull that image up one more time. This was the painting written or drawn, painted on the side of the house here in Charleston, South Carolina. And it always strikes me, you think about street art, Richard, and the impulse to do that, to share art, not in a way that we're going to sell paintings or have an art show, but to share it with the world. It feels that poetry has so much in common with that, because we write these poems without any expectation that they're going to have like financial, monetary value, and yet we put them out in the world anyway, in the same way that a street artist will put their graffiti out in the world. Do you think about that as you're writing poems, that like what the purpose is of putting your dream space, which is what it really is, out into the world for everybody?
No, I don't think about that. But, Black Jesus, that kind of art is also called ecstatic art. And artists who work in that usually are older, and they're often loners, and they all believe, almost all of them believe, that their work is divinely inspired. So that's what would have made him put that painting on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like your work is divinely inspired? Does it come from that place?
I don't know about the divine part, but yeah, inspiration. I mean, the word inspiration means the spirit in you. So yeah, writing is a way to catch that. And that's what I try to teach my students sometimes, to how to catch it. For instance, you go to write in the morning, you've got your cup of coffee, you've got your pencil, your pen, your paper. It's always the same kind of pencil or pen or paper. And you get into the space, and you're not really just going to write. It's an invocation. All those things, the pencil, the paper, the coffee, it's all saying to the muse, I am here. And if you care to visit, that would be nice.
Yeah.
So that idea of inspiration is an old one that's it hasn't gone away. And I saw a TED talk by the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, something or other. And she talked about that. And she thought that maybe the idea of the muse is a better model than the ego, than I wrote this poem. And she gives a lot of examples of it from a lot of artists like Tom Waits and different people.
Mm-hmm. So what is your process like for finding that space, where the ego can drop away? Are you one of those poets? I mean, we talk about sometimes there's poets who write, in that sort of rough draft model where they just let everything flow out and they spend a lot of time crafting it. Are there other poets that are more deliberate and slow with the way poems come out? What is your writing process like when you sit down in front of that page, when you have the inspiration, but you have to get the words out? How does it come to you?
I like to have a place to write. I live in public housing now, and it's pretty nice, but for instance, there's a gazebo out front. I might go there. For some reason, I like to be outside. And I like to have a place. For a while there, when I was married, my wife would be going to doctors, and I'd go with her. And I started writing in doctors' offices. And I really liked writing in doctors' offices so much that I would go to doctors' offices that I didn't even know. And I didn't have an appointment. I wasn't with my wife. And so let's go to a doctor's office. But that didn't work. You kind of have to have some kind of appointment, So the first thing is really the place. It's the place, and it's the holy place. It's the place where and that is it. It's ritualistic. It's an invocation. And it's not, there's no chanting or anything. There's just the paper and the pen and maybe the computer and the phone, and you're just starting there.
Yeah, and the comments Dick Westheimer points out, and I didn't know this, it never occurred to me, I guess, that inspiration is related to breath. Inspiration and respiration are the same roots. And in poetry itself, of course, is the art form of breath. It's the medium of our art is breath. And So when you find the right space, the spiritual space that you need, do you read your poems out loud? Is it the actual breath coming out as you craft the work that you're doing?
No, no, I write in a kind of a slight trance.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, the word trance is very wide. It's very wide. So it's sort of, I usually don't know. I don't, just like I didn't know that poem was spastic. And I usually don't know if a poem is any particularly good until later. I write fast, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to write with whatever is there, you know, whatever is right in front of me. I went to write some weeks ago, and I don't have that poem here, but it's in my computer. But you know how your phone calls up things, and I use my phone with my computer. So my phone, for some reason, said "Zombies on Mars." I don't know what that is, you know. So I just sat down and wrote down "Zombies on Mars," and I wrote a poem, and it took me to an unexpected place, to the portrait of a person who lives here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a poem about endurance. But I didn't, you know, it's just a way of you get the props and you get the things, and then you sit in the spot and you start to move your hand, move your hand across the page. And just, that's one trick of going. You just get your hand moving across the page and the words will follow.
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. Let's hear another poem. We have maybe 3 left that we can share. What do you want to read next?
Okay. Okay, I got 3. So I'll just read them. One thing I know for sure. One thing I know for sure, all the paintings in the Louvre have been sliced in half, lengthwise, and have been reassembled by a blind surgeon. Mona Lisa's smile is now a smirk. And another thing I know for sure, my lover is sitting up in bed by my side and at the same moment sweeping the floor in her house 3,000 miles away. I ask her, how do you accomplish that? Simple, she says. I just don't believe a word you say. The broom brushes against an object I hid underneath her bed. She has found the You Will Always Love Me Juju doll that contains in a little compartment 2 eyelashes, one hers, one mine, that I hid when I was last in her house. My lover carefully removes her eyelash and then whispers in the tiny doll's tiny ear, I am not your lover, and I will never be your lover. 3,000 miles away, I sit up in bed, startled out of sleep, drenched in sweat and breathing hard. My lover, who is sitting up in bed beside me, reading a book about the history of raindrops, says, What's wrong, dear one? In Arabic, which she claims not to know. I don't know, Habibi, I answer. Something is wrong. Something is very wrong.
And that was One Thing I Know for Sure by Richard Garcia, some new poems that he's sharing with us tonight. And we've seen a few poems, Richard, that are prose poems, the majority of art, which is what you're most known for, and some poems that are not. And you mentioned that, people didn't really bother in the past with the definitions of what a prose poem was versus a regular poem or fiction. What is it to you, though? What is the difference between writing a poem in prose versus writing lineated, like some of the poems we've seen have been?
Well, I don't always know, but the difference is a prose poem is a fable. It's part of the real basis of the prose poem is not just a poet writing prose. The real basis is a fable. And the real form of the prose poem is fabulism. People writing fable-based writing. So if what I'm writing sounds a bit like a fable, and then I know it's a prose poem.
Is there a different feel to it? The fact that it's more of a story, less in the voice, maybe more in the mind. How I always think about it, is, there's this continuum. When we're writing in prose, we really want to spark the visual imagination. So you're sort of lost in the movie, the scene that's being created in your head. And poetry is the breath, like we talked about, that inspiration as respiration. And so it's more bodily, and there's sort of a continuum between the two, and it's definitely a continuum because, prose does this too, where you have that sense of the voice and the breath. But poetry, that's like what's at the front. In prose, it's more the movie in your head is what's at front. Is that how you feel the difference is?
Well, you have to remember that when prose poems started, like at the end of the 19th century, there was a big difference between poetry and prose. And so to write a poem in prose was unheard of. Mm-hmm. But now there's not that much difference. And so what we have sometimes when a prose poem is successful is just the poet writing what he thinks is a prose poem, but it's actually just prose. I have a poem I like to read. It's a formal poem, and it's a form called a Spanish sonnet. It's called Spanish Sonnet for Gale. And the Spanish sonnet is shaped differently, as you can see. It's 4 lines, 4 lines, 3 lines, 3 lines. And there's no rhyme because in Spanish, who needs rhyme? And also in Spanish, it's syllabic. It's 11 syllables each. And this is the form that Pablo Neruda wrote all his love sonnets in. So it's called Spanish Sonnet for Gale, after Pablo Neruda, because the first line is his. It is today, all of yesterday dropped away into the bottomless pit just under my bed. But you come knocking at the door just as the pit has become an apocalyptic landscape of ruin. Really just a shell-shocked road to my parents' house. Just before you knocked, I was carrying 2 tiny women, you and your daughter, an empty paint can with a crumpled paper lid, to safety, past the burning buildings, homicidal sentries, bounty hunters and murder squads of my nightly skirmishes and sweat-soaked concealments. I rise, answer the door's question, and you stand there, smiling, not even noticing the dust, the rubble, the smoke, the shadows on the wall as they recede.
Yeah, beautiful poem by Richard Garcia. That was Spanish Sonnet for Gale, after Pablo Neruda. And I should say that if anybody has any questions for Richard Garcia, please leave them in the chat windows on Facebook or YouTube. We have a bit of time left. I can grab any questions you have. I've already passed a few along. Also, don't forget to click the like button. Make sure you do that wherever you're watching this. There's 3 places, live streams after the fact. There's always something you can click to help poetry spread around. We have a whole bunch of people watching, and only 30% of people have clicked the like button yet. So please do click the like button if you like this. You're in the current issue of Rattle, Richard, for a collaboration. There's that. I guess what poem was it? It's not a villanelle. A pantoum, that's what it is. Yeah, it's a pantoum. And you do that a lot. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, I was writing this with Richard Garcia. So how do you go about collaborating with people? It's always different people who mention that to me. And what is it like to collaborate? Why are you drawn to that form of writing?
Well, in this case, I was writing it with Gail, and I did the first stanza of the pantoum, and then she did the next one, and so on and so forth. A lot of people don't know it, but the pantoum was originally a collaborative form.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. How did it come about then? I had no idea.
Well, it's actually I know that because I had a student who speaks Indonesian, and she went to Indonesia and she studied the poem. And the original meaning, it's a folk poem and it's a courting poem. So if you go to pop the question to your bride to be, you hire a poet. She hires a poet. You go to her house, and your poet says the first line of a pantoum, oh, you're a beautiful baby, blah, blah, and then her poet answers.
Oh, wow.
It's actually a courting poem.
That's so
That's
interesting. I mean,
not,
if we had that tradition here, I think poets would have a lot more means of employment. I think
yeah. The
that's
only
really neat to
reason
hear.
I know that is because of this student,
Hmm.
because that's you won't find that in Wikipedia anywhere.
Hmm. Wow, yeah, that's really interesting. And the poem, if anyone wants to go find it, is Tabletop Pantoum by Gail Dawson and Richard Garcia, which is in the spring issue of Rattle, and also was the poem of the day on March 25th. But so collaborating in general, do you find that using, because your poems are sort of like dreams. I mean, they're pulled from dreams. They're that surreal place that you enter. Do you find that sparks your imagination to be working with someone else?
Well, usually I think if you collaborate, you'd have some kind of scheme. I was sitting in a restaurant with the poet Rick Bursky, and we decided we'd write a collaborative poem. And well, I said, "What's the rules?" He said, "Well, it's each each paragraph is going to be 83 words." So that was it. I wrote 83 words. He wrote 83 words. That was the only. So there's usually some kind of game you're playing. You know. Uh, that you're going to do together.
Hmm.
So you can, and often too, I have students writing collaborative poems when we're together. But it's a way of getting outside of yourself too. Outside of your unconscious too, because somebody writes something and then you respond to it, and it's unknown. You have to bring yourself to it, and it's kind of like you're getting away from your usual uh, place of writing.
Yeah, well, it definitely feels like a great way to get out of any like ruts we're stuck into.
Mhm.
We do have time for two more poems, and there's two more left because we skipped the very first one, I think. Do you want to read Another Thing I Know for Sure, which is sort of a follow up to the last poem?
Uh-huh. It is a follow-up, yeah, and that was due to some editing in the magazine it was in. Another thing I know for sure is that Einstein said love was a spooky entanglement. That explains why I cannot stop talking to you even though you are gone. Love is just spooky action at a distance, he said, and dismissed it. Einstein observed love, but could not explain it. I know that when the phone rings at 3 in the morning and I roll over in bed and answer, it is your voice that I hear. I am dreaming, so I hang up. I may be tangled in the sheets, but I'm not crazy. I sit on a bench in the evening by the lake. I love this hour, I say to you, the way the lake darkens and the sky lightens. You answer, I love the way you speak to me, although I am not really here. I love that about you. I know you do, I answer. I know.
And that was Another Thing I Know, a really touching poem by Richard Garcia. And I was thinking about reading that poem in particular, but others as well, with the way you move through, surreal type things a lot of times in your poems, and you never really know what's going to happen next in a Richard Garcia poem. There's a way, though, your voice is really grounded with a kind of intimacy, like it feels like you're really talking to me as I'm reading your poems. I think that's one of the reasons why they work so well. And I was wondering if you have a specific person that you think of as you're writing poems. Is there someone you're talking to? I always imagine maybe that, a poet is writing to their, mother or father or significant other the whole time. Is there anything like that for you? Do you have a certain person that
Yeah,
you're addressing, like the you in that poem?
yeah, I do. But person changes. If I've written about, six or books or maybe more, I don't know. And I've noticed that the dedication page, it's always dedicated to a wife or a partner or a lover
Hmm.
every single time. And it's happened enough times I know that there's somebody, unfortunately, I really admire people who stay married to one person, uh, but it's often to a lover or a wife. Basically, it's love poems. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a way of creating an intimacy in a poem. Even if there's no person you're writing to, just put somebody in there. Just say you know, and that changes the poem. That creates intimacy, even though the person I'm writing to in those couple of poems here, uh, is probably halfway imaginary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even if the person doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's really interesting to hear because it does, as Dick Westheimer says, they feel so much like it's just me and Richard when he reads. And that's the feeling I've always gotten with your poems. Like we're having this really close, you're talking right to me and not talking to anybody else. And I think that's what makes the poems really work. Let's see. Drya Montelido asks, how do you know when a prose poem is successful? How do you know when a prose poem would benefit from reworking? And that's a great question too, because, given that you write from that kind of spiritual state that you're, transcribing your dreams almost in a trance, how much editing does the poem take after the fact?
I do a lot of editing over time.
Mm-hmm.
And just at some point you stop, a teacher of mine said, it's all a draft until you die. And so it's kind of like that. At some point, you just have to let it go. It's kind of like having a child. You keep changing and doing this, doing that, and finally, okay, little poem, go off on your own. But it doesn't mean it's over. If I had a collected poems, I might change some. If I've heard of people who they might be at a party at your house and they look for their own books and start changing it in the book. It doesn't end really. You just kind of have to, when to let go. How do you know when to let go?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think when you just like it, but the first thing is you do have to give it time because you're gonna when you write it, you're gonna think it's the greatest thing you ever wrote. Next day you're gonna find faults with it. Next day a few more. Next day, and then maybe you come back to it 3 weeks later and look at it and make some improvements. And at a certain point, you just let it go. But there's no one point.
Yeah.
I think almost to me, it's like when the poem almost reads like it was written by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can read the poem and say, "Oh, I like this,"
yeah.
but I go through it a lot.
You said an interesting word there, and that you find a falsehood, and that's what you're revising out. Do you feel like that's what you're pursuing is truth? And what is the truth that you're pursuing in the poems?
I don't know. I like to tell myself stories that I haven't heard before. And that's kind of what I like about when I like a poem that I write is it's almost as if somebody else wrote it. And there's no one truth. It's just a little bit of this truth. But yeah.
Well, let's finish out with one last poem then. I think you didn't read the very first poem in the packet that you sent, the two old men walking two old dogs.
Yeah. And I have a friend who lives nearby, and sometimes we meet and talk. And sometimes I write a poem from something, and I say to someone, and I can't say it to no one. I have to say it to someone. And so we meet on the corner and we discuss, and I said, gee, there should be a TV program. We should be a TV program called Two Old Men Walking Two Old Dogs, Solving the World's Problems, And then later I thought of that, oh, yeah. And so this is my friend and I, we meet. Two old men walking two old dogs, strolling down the street side by side in Charleston, South Carolina, solving the world's problems. One of the men is still floating in the afterglow of last night's dream, where he told a woman, your body is a midnight superhero. The other old man says, the truth is a small town zoo at a town so small that even a cat is an exotic animal to be kept pacing back and forth in a cage. Two old men, both lucky as autumn leaves, because time for them has been a gentle gardener. One of them keeps an eye out for one of the bricks in the buildings of the projects they are strolling by. A brick with the fingerprints of an enslaved child. Were her parents sold away? Did she have time to mourn, or just enough time to press an initial into the wet brick and set it to dry in the sun with the others? Home is the bootleg bird song. But the other old man is not fooled by the song of the mockingbird spiraling down from the crenulations of the abandoned prison built to look like a castle for a handsome prince and a lovely princess to stand on the ramparts admiring the glow of the setting sun. Even the two old scraggly bow-legged dogs know that such love is an impossible promise. Know that both of the old men are tired of the ghosts that hover around the wounds of such deep suffering. One of the old men notices how the whisking clouds seem to be signaling something in a grand, wasted gesture.
Yeah, it was a great poem to end on. That was two old men walking two old dogs. My guest today has been Richard Garcia. It's so fun talking to you and sharing your imaginative poems. There's always just these fun spaces to enter every time I come across one of your poems, Richard. Really fun to know how they come to be and talk to you. Yeah.
There's a prison we walk by. There's a prison we walk by. It's an abandoned prison that looks like a castle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's people really suffered there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Oh no, it's okay. It's just thanks so much for being a guest. It's been great sharing your poems and getting to know you a little better, Richard.
Yeah, same here.
Yep.
Same here.
Take care.
Thank you for your stewardship. It was very helpful.
Yeah, well, definitely my pleasure. So that was Richard Garcia, of course, with some wonderful poems this tonight. You can find all of Richard's books at richardgarcia.info. That's richardgarcia.info. PMB on the chat was asking where the best place to find books are. And usually if you go to the artist or the author's website, where they link to there to buy the books are the best place to go. So go to richardgarcia.info to get that book, or all the books. And I have the Chair. I love that from BOA. One of my favorite books. One of the books where I feel like if I'm stopped up a little bit, I read that and feel my imagination opening up. So always wonderful work by Richard Garcia. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And how the prompt lines work is this. So email your poem first to promptlines, it's all one word, promptlines@rattle.com. Then find the Zoom link, which I'm about to deploy on YouTube or Facebook. You can join the Zoom, but only if you want to share a poem. And this is one of those weeks where sharing a poem on Zoom is great, but even if you're doing that, you might want to go back to the YouTube page, because the prompt for this week was to write an ekphrastic poem about your favorite painting. And on the actual streams on YouTube and Facebook, we're going to be showing those paintings from a lot of poets. I know me and Katie have our paintings pulled up. So if you're watching those streams, you can watch them. So you might want to jump on the Zoom, share your poem, and then go back to the YouTube, or wait a little bit before you come on the Zoom to make sure you get to see everybody else's their favorite paintings. But we'll do that. So email your poem there to promptlines@rattle.com. Find the Zoom link, and I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back, looking forward to an exciting Prompt Lions, and we're joined, as always, by our Prompt Poems editor who's getting a last-minute sip of coffee, Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I loved that discussion. It made me really excited for when I go to sleep tonight, and I'm going to try to lucid dream.
Are you going to lucid dream? I don't know. I mean, Jo, who you know, of course. I mean, she did for I don't know, for maybe 6 months or something. She was lucid dreaming all the time. She loved flying and things like that. But it was just it felt so mature, I think, to me, at maybe 6 or however old she was, to say, you know what, this is just too intense. I'm feeling tired when I wake up. Let's just go back to just not even trying. And so that kind of that's her personality in a nutshell, though, I guess.
Yeah, well, she's wise beyond her years, and I am not, so I will give it a go.
Yeah, well, I've tried. I've never been able to get it done. So maybe you'll be more lucky than me. So we had a really fun prompt this week, and we should say too, the poetry space was about ekphrastic poetry. Richard Garcia shared some ekphrastic poems. I mean, I don't know why, but it's really in the zeitgeist. We planned our stuff, but I didn't realize Richard was going to be sending those poems. And so this was the prompt for this week, was to write not just an ekphrastic poem, but one about your favorite painting. And and it's always hard for me to figure out what favorite means. I think that just is kind of confusing a concept. Speaking of Jo, my daughter, she was, she's always like, what's your favorite color? And she's always obsessed with keeping track of what everybody's favorite color is at the current moment. And it just makes zero sense to me. I mean, I like when leaves are green, I like them. But
I think we should go ahead and say we assume that everyone's painting is one of their favorite paintings, because it's really hard to just have one. But Tim, I would argue that people use favorite as a way to be able to talk about one that's really towar's the top. But you're right.
I just don't really understand. Just in general, I mean, things, I don't know. The concept is it doesn't click in my brain. I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I like things in certain times, and there's reasons I like different things, and I don't know what's my favorite anything. I mean,
well, I'm very curious because I don't know what painting, I mean, I posted mine ahead of schedule, but you did not, so I don't know.
I do it the next day, so it can be a surprise just for you.
Yeah, well, then I spoil it every time. That's my role.
No, it's okay. But I know your favorite painting because we talked about it before, and it's Manet's Olympia. And so I'll put this on the screen so everybody at home can see this. And so explain why this painting, it's your favorite painter, and it's your favorite painting by your favorite painter. So everybody, tell us why.
Well, so I first became aware of this painting, I guess, in college. And then it wasn't until I saw it in person that I really fell in love with it. It's a very arresting size. It's absolutely enormous. And then the Musée d'Orsay is probably my favorite place in the entire world. I mean, an impressionist art exhibit of the absolute best impressionist art in an old train. You just can't get better than that, So anyway, so it really captured me in person in a way that I've rarely been completely taken over by a painting. So it was that. And then there's so much to say about the painting. There's so many questions around it. And Manet was a fascinating person. So all those things, I think, are why.
And you've never, though, written a poem about this painting. Even though it's your favorite, and you've written a lot of different poems about paintings, poems in museums. Why do you think you struggled or didn't for a long time until we had this prompt?
Never wrote a successful poem about this painting. I did attempt to write one before, but I think it was because I was trying to do what we talked about trying to not do when we talked on the poetry space about ekphrastic poetry, and Elizabeth McMoon Tatango, who won the Rattle Ekphrastic Challenge 6 times now, was talking about, and finding an entry point into it that wasn't there's no way I'm going to top the enormity of this painting in one little poem by me. So finding the way that I connected with the painting right now, and that's what's so special about art, right? Is that we can connect with different aspects of it our whole life. We get to look back, in 40 years, who knows what I'll feel about this painting. So
yeah, well, really interesting. So how did you access this one? Was there some way what was your entry point?
My entry point was surprising because it had to do with my daughter Lizzie saying, she's working on this project for her homeschool Girl Scouts troop, which I'm super excited about tomorrow. And so she was telling me some seemingly random things, and this one stuck in my mind, and it was I think that's related somehow to the painting. And then I just explored how, and hopefully found some kind of connection, or else it wasn't a very successful poem, I suppose.
Okay, well, let's hear the poem. It's called Paint Fumes. Then go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. Tonight I'm thinking about Luna moths, not because one curled up beside me, body too big to be a butterfly, wings too neon to be natural, but because my daughter paused while gluing a piece of black construction paper to a white poster board to announce that Luna moths don't have mouths. She accepted this as standalone, the way I accept that running water will always be there to clean my hands of paint, or that I'm about to paint our bags and ship us to Paris, where Olympia was born, her mouth clamped shut with lightning bolts. See how lipstick makes a woman speak without a sound? In such a way, thanks to Manet, she was born without a mouth. And with shoes, what else could she do but leap to a new leaf? In a naked world, she painted herself opaque, nude and a prostitute. But I buy flowers too, and I have varnished all these parts of mine as best as I could do. Repainted room after room, but still I flutter around and wonder, even under the spackling heat of a South Florida summer, if I too was born complete.
Yeah, beautiful poem. And again, I think that what we talked about on the Poetry Space, which I should say you can find by typing the Poetry Space into iTunes or Spotify or Amazon Music or whatever, is that the ekphrastic poetry, it started out just meaning description, because we needed descriptions of things. You couldn't go and it was hard to look at, a painting by Manet, but an ekphrastic poem would paint it with words. And so you could sort of experience a little bit what it was like. But now it's more about the emotion and what we get out of the paintings. And so it's a great example of how you get deeper into your actual like personal interaction with the painting.
Yeah, it was really fun excuse to nerd out and find out that, like, I listened to all these podcasts about the painting, and one of the things, and I mentioned this on the Poetry Space, was that Manet painted the Olympia in opaque paint and the rest of it in transparent paint over the canvas. So that's why she like jumps out at you, and so that did make its way into the poem. So I love any excuse to nerd out on art history. So.
Yeah. Well, I do love, and I didn't really know, I probably thought Monet and Manet were the same person for...
You did before me.
Yeah,
you can thank me for that. I helped you.
The first 40 years of my life, I thought that. But I did write a poem, Triolet on the Grass, a little triolet about picnic on the grass, or whatever you call that in French. And that's the thing about Manet, is that his subjects like stand out so much. And that painting, the central figure there is like staring right out at you in the same way as in this photograph Olympia. And that is just, like she's staring like into your soul. And that's the thing that's so fascinating. And the way she's lit differently. So it's just a wonderful painting.
Yeah. Well, what is your non-favorite favorite?
Well, the one that I chose, and I have no idea. But the one that I chose is, it's this one. So me and you, we were together in San Diego, and we found this painting at, where was it? I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. It's at the Timken Museum of Art in San Diego. Do you remember that? We were like walking around San Diego.
Yeah.
We're like, where can we go? We went to the main museum, and there's the Timken's, a smaller one, but really interesting. And so we came across this painting, which is the Cranberry Harvest, Nantucket Island by Eastman Johnson. And there's something about it that I really loved. I felt like, and I'll put it on screen, and you can't see it, of course, Katie, unfortunately, but you've seen it before.
Yes.
And so it's on Nantucket Island, painted in 1880, and all these people are harvesting cranberries, so it's autumn, and everybody's bent over, working at the fields. There's kids there, there's older people in chairs. Beautiful setting in the background. And this one woman is standing, staring off in the distance, off the canvas, where you have no idea what she's really looking at. Maybe it's the sunset. Maybe it's like someone she saw, like a lighting on the hill, or who knows what. But she's standing there, and nobody else is looking or acknowledging what's going on, except this one person, this one little child in the background is looking at her. And for some reason, I saw that painting, and it struck me as sort of a very spiritual in a weird way. And so I just really like that painting. And I don't know if I could call it my favorite painting, but for now we'll call it my favorite painting. How about that?
Good. It qualifies. Nobody has to worry about, is this literally my number one painting? You're good. You loved it. I remember when we saw it, and you were very taken with it. And I was like, wow, because I hadn't necessarily noticed.
And I didn't really know why, which is the fun thing about ekphrastic poetry. So I wrote this poem, and it's called The Cranberry Harvest. So here we go with my poem, The Cranberry Harvest. No one else sees though a single child can be seen, seeing her, seeing it. What it is that she sees in the golden distance of the evening hour on the north shore of Nantucket. Her neighbors sprawl on their knees in the autumn fields, enjoying the work of working together, heads bowed almost in prayer to the prize of the future sweetness of the sour fruit they plucked with their hands from the brambles. Among the 40 figures, only that one child knows, not by knowing it, but by knowing her knowing, that the unknown off canvas that made her stand like the smudge of a steeple, like the suggestion of a lighthouse in the distance, a beacon by day, not creating light but gathering it, in the warm basket of her face, the blue ribbon of her plain bonnet tipped toward whatever it is that drew her up, her eyes on the horizon, the shadow drawn by its straw brim so that they could gather the most of that unseen sight in her gaze, is the way you look up from your desk while we're working together, taking a moment to gather every there in the fruit of the moment, and every possible future the seeds in that fruit of the moment contain. That is The Cranberry Harvest by Eastman Johnson, and apparently it's my favorite poem. Katie Dozier.
That was amazing. I have to say, I preferred that poem to the work of art in question.
I really liked it. I love that what it was she was looking at was not there, and you had to just imagine. And I think that's what it is. It sparked my imagination thinking, like, what is she staring at? Is that like the love of her life out there? Is it just the sunset? Is there like some beautiful bird landed in a tree? I mean, what is she looking at? And I love that you don't know, and you'll never know because, Eastman Johnson died 140 years ago.
I think that you put it better than he did, though. That's amazing. That was a really great poem. You did warn me it was good, but man.
Well, I enjoyed it. It was fun writing that one. All right. So that was our prompt poems. Thanks, Katie. And you'll be back later to share next week's prompt and things like that. All right. So let's go to our next poets. And next up is Nate Jacob. Hey, Nate. How you doing?
Hey, good evening. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Great to see you. So what do you have for us today, Nate?
I also chose my not favorite work of art.
Do you not understand? I don't know. I feel like annoying, like a very annoying person when I complain about not having favorites, but it really does, like, is a concept. I don't understand it. Because I know I have like a favorite baseball team that sort of makes no sense. I'm a Mets fan. You're not.
Right.
but like I grew up watching the Mets, and so it's like this nonsensical favorite, and I can say that the Mets are my favorite baseball team. But everything else, I mean, there's just like things I like about so many things, and it makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I'm the same. If I can't make it part of my identity, I don't know that I can call it my favorite thing.
You're giving a thumbs down in the background. So which painting did you choose, though, Nate?
But I did, semi-ironically, I chose Daedalus and Icarus by Peter Paul Rubens.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, because a couple years ago, I wrote a poem apologizing to Daedalus for always digging up Icarus for poetry. So I wrote a poem today inspired by this, but I don't mention Icarus at all.
Interesting. Okay, well, let's hear it.
It's titled, All of My Dreams Are Flight Plans. At some point, it stopped raining long enough that the dove kept asking Noah to go outside, to have a look around. Maybe there were worms, maybe there was life. And in time, Noah relented, sent everyone's favorite bird flapping into mid-morning, reflected below on a new sea, calm to the point of panic at the loss it all was hiding. And the dove came back, hungry and humbled and homeless. But the dove came back, and as the world laid waste. Now my son prepares to spread fledged wings, to fly south toward a horizon I can't see, can barely imagine, and saw yesterday as only danger. And because I cannot stop him, would not stop him if I could, I line his span with maps and hopes that he will return to my home, which is disappearing below him at the edge of a heartless long goodbye. He will fly too high and too low, between hubris and humility, but he will come back to me, the same small boy who left me, this time, I hope, to take me with him, to carry me high and away. Letting go, the flight controls, Mayday.
Oh, that's a wonderful hyphen. All my dreams are flight plans, and shows the range of your abilities, Nate, because that's a very touching poem, and a lot of times we have a lot of fun with what you share. Thanks so much for being here. As always, that was great.
Can I also say, I really love that you didn't directly mention Icarus in that. Like, that was really brilliant. I would have had to have, like, put that in there, but that was great.
Yeah, well, I publicly swore off Icarus a couple of years ago, like I said, so
That's
I can't
very
go back on my
wise.
word.
At least one poet has. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah. I mean, on the poetry space, we did do two poems by Auden and William Carlos Williams, about the Icarus, the Bruegel painting, and the dueling there. There are a lot of Icarus poems.
Yeah, somebody tweeted another Icarus poem to me today. I've already read an Icarus poem.
Yeah, the falling and flying, the Jack
the
Gilbert. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot. That was great, Nate.
Yeah, it really was. Thanks, Nate. There was Nate Jacob with all of my dreams or flight plans. That's great. I think we might end up having a kind of longish show tonight because we got a lot of people on the open lines, and it's really fun to look at the poems too, or the paintings too. So it might be a bit, but let's go to Carla Schwartz next.
Hi. Thank
Carla.
you, and I'm glad to be here, and what a fantastic interview and the poem so far. And I put a link. It may not come out as a link in that PDF, but you can copy that.
Everything works. I got it under control. So this is
okay.
The Dream. I've never seen this one, a Cubist painting, but let's put this up on screen. And again, everybody should be watching the YouTube stream if they can. We have 25 people on the Zoom, but keep yourself on mute on Zoom and somehow so you can see these poems too. And this is The Dream, a really interesting Cubist poem. Can you describe it for us, Carla?
Yeah, well, it's like these kind of look like airplanes, but with teeth, rockets rather, and kind of masked and mean looking with these objects, and they're also like fish-like because they have fish tails, and there's a bunch of them, so it looks kind of voodoo-like to me.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And and I don't have favorites, like I say. And so I was in the museum last week, and I had the opportunity to see this painting. And so I wrote this very short poem. But before I read it, I just want to say two things on pronunciation. It's Musée d'Orsay and also Bruegel. Okay.
Bruegel. Okay. Well, I'll learn Bruegel, but I'm never going to say whatever the heck.
That is a correction for me, having screwed that up on the poetry space. The thing was, too, I knew I was going to because Tim was like, "Oh, you're the one who can kind of speak French," and I was like, I will never say it correctly now. So
Bruegel,
that is correct,
okay.
Carla. And I'm sorry that I Americanized it. It is a beautiful museum, and I should never speak its name.
Okay. Anyway, this is called "If Only This Were a Dream." After with Wilfredo Lamb's painting, The Dream. Just remember, everyone has an asshole, pisses and shits. Even gunslingers and archers need to eat. They can't hide behind the masks they wear. When they aim, you can see their teeth.
Oh, that's I love that ending in particular. We'll flash back to the poem that was inspired. The painting that inspired that poem. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Carla.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, that was Carla Schwartz. Again, that was The Dream. The painting was inspired by Wilfredo Lamb. And Carla's poem was If Only This Were a Dream. A really interesting pairing there. Let's go next to Bishwajit Mishra.
Hey, Tim. Good evening.
Great to see you.
Good to see you too. The interview was so good. I mean, his voice was so authentic.
Mm-hmm.
It was so good. I don't have. I can't say I'm like you, but I don't know much about painting to pick one. To be honest.
Me neither. Actually, by going to art galleries with Katie, I like paintings. I like looking at them, but I've never taken like an art history class. I don't know what the periods are, it seems like it's interesting. I had this little book. There was like a cheat sheet book, like the Cliff Notes for going to a museum that someone gave me once. And I learned a little bit about that. So Katie's holding up her book that's just about Monet. You can see there.
I had the same problem. I thought it was Monet, and Monet, maybe it's pronounced Monet. Until they told me, I was just going to Google it. I mean, is it the
Well, I
same?
think Manet needs better branding. That's what I think. It's a little too close, and maybe Monet should sue him, or maybe the other way around. I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah. This is a rant that I go on every time I'm somewhere with Manet. Like he would be way more well known if it weren't for Monet. Like that's just a fact. You're right. He should have changed his name. Let's be honest.
Or just going by Eduardo.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, because Katie, I listened to what was that Poetry Space yesterday, and that's where I got that. I thought maybe the same guy. It's pronounced Monet. I may have got it wrong all this while. Until I saw that, then I saw the name. I was going to Google, and team said that I thought Monet and Monet are the same.
Well, we can all be educated by Katie. It's okay. So what do you have? You sent 3 poems.
Yeah, I said I wasn't sure, so I was trying out. So there's 2 of them. My daughter used to paint when she was younger, so not great painting, but something. And I picked Paul Gauguin's painting. I know that name because of the novel Moon and Sixpence. That was Somerset Maugham's novel. I love it. It's based on his life. And he's like the guy who painted the murals and on the houses, and they broke down. He gave away everything, right? So anyway, so I'm going to read. There are a lot of people, so I'm going to read one poem called "Facing the Truth."
Okay, and that's the one by your daughter?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that's a great choice for favorite painting. I think maybe we have to pick our kids. Maybe that solves my favorites problem.
I don't know. So it's in the paint. The picture, the painting is in the poem itself. So I'm going to read.
Yeah, I have it up for everybody. It's a. But I'm not sure what there's a figure sort of looking toward a brick wall. Is that what that is?
Yeah, sitting facing the wall, but she's sitting on a low chair, like I don't know. It's a traditional kind of stool during religious. Facing the truth, a wall and the stones, the sand with the history, not just the victors. Are the imprints, the truth embossed as fossils that need seeing. Everything else is the world where the sun will shine from the space. That I need to face and keep facing, seeing connections that are not joining of bricks, but settling a milk into yogurt, as they are all the same, just denser with the truth.
I love that ending, the denser with the truth. Yeah, that's great. And a wonderful sketch by your daughter. Thanks so much for sharing that, Biz.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, that's Bishop Mishra with Facing the Truth. And next in line is Audrey Friedman.
Good evening.
Good evening, Audrey. How are you doing tonight?
Good. So mine is also not my favorite, but
See,
it was
so I think I'm winning.
compelling.
If there were a poll about favoriting things, then I think I'm beating Katie Josher.
It was compelling.
Uh-huh.
The photograph of it is in the poem that I sent. It was a poem. It was a poem. It was a photograph of Matinicus Island off the coast of Maine, where the weather is harsh and bleak. And it was just so chilly that I don't know why it attracted me, because I don't like anything cold.
Well, maybe
But
that's why. That's really interesting.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I was just really entranced by that. And I wrote this pantoum. It's not a new poem. This poem was published about 5 years ago, maybe more, in the Literary Nest. But here we go. Matinicus. It's a pantoum. The rock's thrust fingers point you home. Go, they warn, before the mailboat leaves. This place turns jail, and the seas are mean, wardens of those who do not flee. Go, they warn, before the mailboat leaves. This place is sharp with salt and death, wardens of those who do not flee. This isle, a far-out fringe of Penobscot Bay. This place is sharp with salt and death, Matinicus, a most inhospitable host. This isle, a fair out fringe of Penobscot Bay, will hold you here or throw you into the sea. Matinicus, a most inhospitable host. The place turns jail and the seas are mean. Will you be held or thrown to the sea? The rocks thrust fingers, point you home.
Yeah, that's a wonderful pantoum. This place is sharp with salt and death. Great line there. And we'll show the photograph again. This is Lobster Boats, Matinicus Island, Maine, by Berenice Abbott. And so you see the lobster boats up there with the rocks in the foreground. Really interesting piece, Matinicus. Thanks so much for sharing that, Audrey.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, my pleasure. Everybody's pleasure. This is, that was Audrey Friedman with Matinicus. And next up, let's go to Stephen Croft.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Stephen. Great to see you.
Thank you. I'd like to say my favorite painting is Don Quixote by Pablo Picasso, probably because I can't open that novel and start reading without laughing out loud. And I've been to the Louvre and I've stared at the paintings because that's one of the things you're supposed to do when you go to Paris. What I remember most is how surprisingly small the Mona Lisa is. And that's my main takeaway. This poem is about the painting I've stared at the longest because of how long it often takes physicians to show up in an examination room. So this is called Art for Calm's Sake. I sit in the examination room with my mother, waiting for the physician to knock, push through the door with results of last week's MRI images. After a week's long regimen of pills, pain crippling her back, her walk barely stabilized with crutches, she rests in a blue vinyl lounger after her journey to the third floor. My back pressing the wall in a stackable reception chair. In the room's quiet, I stare at an impressionist painting. Under the sun's yellow, a blue-gray river, two tall trees on an easy sloping bank, casting shadows on a field of grass, and white wildflowers, sheer cirrus feathering a wide blue curve of sky. The figure of a woman is small under a tall spearhead of tree, its olive crown checkered by openings to trunk and branches, her arms akimbo, palms pressing a blowing yellow sundress to the small of her back. She watches a child run through the wildflower field between trees. I drowse in this afternoon that is all healthy spring, where hope is day long obvious.
It was wonderful. Yeah. Great description of that.
I can't tell you the name of the painter, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I have a poem in my first book, The American Fractal, about Impressionism, that abstract kind of just generalized painting that I happened to be staring at when I was stuck in a hotel one day. And it's just so fascinating, those paintings that you'll never even know the artist of, but then that you still remember in some weird way. So I'm glad you captured one of those, Stephen.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thanks. It was Stephen Crawford, Art for Calm's Sake. Nancy Sobanek is up next.
Hi, Tim and Katie.
Hey, Nancy.
How are you?
Oh, great.
I'm going to be a poem called Persistence, after The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali. I'd send you a link for that. I don't know if you have it pulled up.
Yeah, I have the poem.
That's one of my favorite paintings. I'm so excited. Sorry, interrupt excitedly.
Well, I'll pull it up for those who don't know it.
I was fortunate to see it about a week and a half ago at Museum of Modern Art in New York. And it was great seeing it in person. Persistence. She labors for even a gill's measure of breath, hooked to a ventilator, access Monday to a constellation of intravenous pumps. Inside her head, stars raft a river of lymph, ready to supernova in a lung, or some distant bone. Intensive care of the estuary in which she drifts, ever close to open sea. Glial cells annex new territory. The tumor fluoresces, plants an orange flag in her cerebrum. Invisible hands work strings that cause her to jerk. Seizures no longer controlled with benzodiazepines. Time has not stolen her yet. Hands so slack and warm. Everywhere I look, clocks drape themselves, flaccid centuries. They mimic the dying, exaggerate their influence. Here, time itself is talkless. There is no tesseract, no rewind, but my memories waft, fragrant and ripe as a soft camembert melting in hot sun, with tiny ants to remind us we must invite ourselves to the table. I think of the Easter when she danced in the garden, the tulips nodding in joy. I see myself dancing too, and wave.
Yeah, beautiful poem, and that was a persistence after the persistence of memory, which is that famous painting of sort of the melting clocks, which I didn't realize that was what it was called, by Salvador Dali. Beautiful poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Nancy.
The opportunity.
I really love the line, her time, or here time itself is talkless. I mean, that's amazing. I feel like Dolly would really love that line also.
Yeah, that really was a great line. Yeah.
I liked, the ending. It was about my mother, and the ending to me feels a little surreal too. So I was trying to get that in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, great work. Yeah, so fun to look at all these paintings and then the poems they inspire. Thanks for sharing that, Nancy.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was Nancy Sobanek with Persistence. And next is Mike Bales.
I just wrote this before Rattlecast. I got back from some stuff in Iowa City.
Oh, great.
Again, I didn't necessarily write about my favorite. I think my favorite might be Guernica, this really disturbing black and white painting by him.
Yeah.
But I'd already written about it, so I wrote about something else. You can probably blame Crisis Line, who he volunteered for in Waterloo, for me liking paintings, because once they had a painting sale to raise money for the hotline, and there I saw a print of Picasso. I didn't have time to send you the link. The thing called Le Bouquet de Fleurs, Bouquet for Peace. It's a hand with flowers, handing it to another hand. So it's a simple image. Maybe you can see it from the description I gave it. I emailed it to you. The poem's called A Simple Thing. Two hands, that's what I saw. The hand of a man giving flowers, simple colors, to the hand of a woman. The background was white. It could have been anything, a backdrop for love, but the artist said peace. The first time I saw Picasso was in college, when I was stopping by an art auction held in the lobby of a dormitory. I think it was fall when it bore the weight of courses and lessons, but I knew somewhere people about my age were dying in wars. The bouquet could have been anything to anyone who took in the scene, but for the moment it was a bouquet of dandelions picked by a child's hand.
Oh, yeah, I love that ending, Mike. Yeah, great poem. And that was A Simple Thing. And I'll put up this...
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I'll put up that image on screen. I was looking it up while you were talking about it, and this is it by Picasso. Yeah, wonderful poem there. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. All right. Yeah, great. I love looking at the art, and what inspires people is so interesting to see. Great prompt, Katie. It's really fun. It's one of those ones we're having a fun night with it. And let's go to Siobhan Brownlee next, who, of course, it's very late at night for her, so glad to get you up pretty soon. Hey, Siobhan.
Hello. So my painting is La Classe de Danse, which is the ballet class, Edgar Degas, finished in 1874, and it's at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris. But there's also a sister painting very similar at the Met in New York.
Very interesting. We'll show this on screen. Well, you have it. There it is. That painting, La Classe de Danse by Edgar Degas, 1874. Yeah, I've seen that one for sure too.
Yeah, it's quite famous. Yes. Yeah. So what I did with this is a braided poem with 3 different characters, different eras, different ages, but what they have in common is a fascination with dance, in particular ballet. So I just gave it the name of the painting, the ballet class. She was a good child, quiet, just listened to the adults, so good that her parents didn't bother to pay babysitters. They took her with them to the cinema, even though the films were for adults. Once in a movie, there was a scene with ballerinas in tights and leotards, rehearsing in a mirror-clad room, legs extending high, delicate arms, leaps, pirouettes. Degas, in frock coat, attends a ballet class with his sketch pad. The Paris Opera studio is high-ceilinged, and the ballet master's rod is tapping the floorboards. Dancers gather around in fluffy white romantic tutus with colorful sashes at their waists. Notice the one who's perched on the piano scratching her back, and another fanning herself, and another with elegant pointed shoe in curtsy position, turned out feet, hands on hips. They are tired at the end of the class, but exhilarated. After all these years of different dance teachers and different floors, music giving birth to moving contours of the body, sweat, effort, expression, shoulders down, neck long, hair swept back with pins, remembering sequences of steps, repetition, the getting it right, all this still excites the woman, even though her right foot sometimes aches in its black leather ballet shoe. And there she was, a little girl, 3 years old, quiet as usual, absorbing, watching the pink satin ballet shoes on the screen, and eyes wide as she sees the ballerinas twirling on their tiptoes. She stands up in a moment of silence in the film. She who never speaks, so the parents don't bother with a babysitter, she stands up and points at the screen and proclaims, "I want to do that." After the class, Degas, full of ideas, hurries back to his studio. He begins sweeping lines across the paper for his preliminary drawing. Light from the dance class window plays on the figures. What a crusty old ballet master, he thinks. But the dancers, they braid, poems, songs, art, life with their limbs.
Oh, that was wonderful. And I love the way that the story flowers out of the painting. And that was the painting was once again La Classe de Danse by Edgar Degas. One thing about this episode is I'm going to learn how to say so many painters' names that I've never known how to say before. So thanks for sharing that, Siobhan. A really wonderful poem.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, it was The Ballet Class by Siobhan Brownlee, and a poem fitting in one page. I forgot to say that there is a one-page max on the prompt lines. If your poem is more than one page, we can't share it because we really got to get to everybody. But that was a perfectly length poem, Siobhan. A really wonderful one, too. Chelsea McClellan is up next.
Hello.
Hello. Great to see you, Chelsea.
See you all. I am unfortunately sorely uneducated in paintings.
Well, me
so
too.
I
You
reached
and me
out.
both. It seems like maybe we're one of the only ones today, but yeah, I like museums, but I don't know what's what. I have no idea.
But I have two close friends who are artists, and so perhaps I should know more through them. But I don't. Anyway, I reached out to them for their favorite paintings, and so I just wrote one off of Scotland Forever by Lady Elizabeth Butler.
Yeah, so I have this on screen for those just listening. Yeah, it's this horses, sort of the brigade of cavalry stampeding straight to you with one horse in particular, almost about to jump out of the page into your living room. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's my poem in response. I am a horse on the front lines. But which one today? The one held steady by my rider's guiding force, dressed in needless it. The one with head high, in rebellion of the bit, running only by the force of those behind. The one called level-headed, quietly overexerting, drooling to prove herself worthy. The one facing the day head-on, but only by the means of the jolt that mutual grumbling sparks, or the one facing the day head-on, by the means of symbiotic breath, the interchange of courage. Every day is war, and I must wake ready to stamp out my own will, load my arms with kindling, allow my children's fire to savor the days of security, to sip freely on the victory.
Yeah, that's great. That line, every day is a war, I must wake, turning it in on the self, having that turn of the poem from the painting to the personal. Really great use of the ekphrastic form. Chelsea, thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
It was Chelsea McClellan. The painting was Scotland Forever by Lady Elizabeth Butler, and the poem was I Am a Horse on the front lines. All right, and next up, we have a first-time caller, I believe. Jacob Pearson is here.
Hi,
Hey.
how are you?
Yeah, great to see you. So where are you calling from, Jacob?
I am calling from about an hour outside of Portland, Oregon, in a town with the unfortunate name of Boring. But the views are anything but. It's so pretty here. So
Yeah,
so
well,
nice to put. Sorry.
No, I'm so glad you could join us. Yeah, it's really, really fun to have you.
Yeah, it's so nice to put faces to names and the voices. I've only ever listened, and when I heard that it was going to be based on a painting, I felt like I had to hop on. So I might nerd out. But the painting that I chose, I knew that my favorite series of paintings, if you want to call it, is the Black Paintings by Francisco Goya. And they're not something you look at if you want to be happy. They have such wonderful expression. And so before I read mine, my poem's pretty short, but I'll just say a little bit about Goya and then get out of everyone's hair. He was completely deaf due to illness, and he was in France during a time when a tyrant was overthrown. And when that tyrant came back into power, he was accused, or all but accused, of treason, and lost all of his connections, and he went into exile. And he spent the rest of his life in exile. And on the walls of his farmhouse, he painted what we call the Black Paintings. These were never commissioned. They were not meant for anybody. They were things on the walls that he painted, he ate, he slept around. And the one painting that I chose specifically is called The Drowning Dog. Sounds super depressing, and it is in the grand scheme of it. And as I was writing and I was thinking about this, my mind kept going back to, this is the only painting that has no humans in it. There's only a dog. And for those that are listening, it's just all tan. And in the foreground, there's this like sienna mass, sort of. And the dog's head is coming out from behind it. And I kept thinking, oh, is he seeing himself? You know, he's seeing this every single day. Does he see himself in the dog? And so the poem, very short, it's called Exile. And it's just treading water. The bridge is gone. Fires in the distance. Really wonderful. I had no idea that story about Goya, and really, really powerful painting, which I'd never seen before too, and a great poem. So much. Really fun having you on. Thanks so much for sharing that. Of course. Thank you.
Yeah.
Also, I have to compliment your Hosier poster in the background. I am a fan. I've been, not only because it's so similar to my last name, but they're also playing near me in a few days. I'm going to go outside of the concert and listen for free. But I have seen them in concert too. I'm a fan too. So
I could talk about him for like hours. So let's not open that can of worms, baby. So,
all right, we'll come back and we'll do it little by little when you come back.
Okay, next song then. So,
okay,
wonderful day.
I believe though, Katie, it's pronounced Hoje.
Do not say that. Everyone when they meet me, they're like, "Is it Dozier?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just a normal person."
Yeah, that's Katie Dozier and it is Hosier. But very fun. Yeah, that was really wonderful. Thanks for sharing that, Jacob. That was Jacob Pearson with The Drowning Dog. Francisco Goya is the poem, or painting, and Exile is the poem. A really powerful painting. I didn't know anything about that, about Goya either, like that. Let's go up next to Zachary Honeycutt.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Katie.
Hey, Zach.
Hey, so I usually don't like to write about my love life, but I decided to write about my girlfriend Lisa and our on again, off again relationship and the problems I've been having with her.
Okay, but Zachary, this is two
Yeah.
pages, dude. Like,
It's,
there's a
it's
one
there's a
page
lot of
max. There's
spaces.
20.
There's spaces. I'll read half of it.
Okay, you read half of it, and maybe read the next half next week. Because really, we got to stick to the one page. The one page. You know the rule.
You let me slide last week, Tim.
I know, but see, if I let you slide, then everybody slides forever, and I shouldn't have let you slide last week, but now I'm not. So read the
got
first half,
spoiled.
and we'll be on bated breath for 7 days until we get to the next half of
You're
this poem.
spoiling me, Tim. All right. Breaking up with Lisa, a pantoum.
And this is after Mona Lisa, of course, one of the maybe the most famous paintings ever, which we have on screen here. As Stephen Croft said, a much smaller than you would imagine as well.
Breaking up with Lisa, a pantoum. Listen, Lisa, I don't think this is going to work out between you and me, babe. But hold on, be patient. I'm going to tell you all the reasons why. Firstly, that smile is super off-putting. I can't tell whether you're happy or sad. And why should I see one painting when there's an entire museum? Babe, hold on. Be patient. I'm going to tell you all the reasons why. Don't look at me like that. This isn't easy for me. And by the way, you could contribute a little more to the conversation. Why should I see one painting when there's an entire museum full of them? Do you really expect me to stand around all night long looking at you? Don't look at me like that. This is as hard for me as it is for you. By the way, you could try to put a little bit more effort into how you look. I like ladies who dress a little bit more hip. And to be honest, looking at you all night, I have to say, you're about a 7.5. But a solid 7.5. With some newer clothes and makeup, it could be a 9.1. Try to put a little bit more effort into how you look. I just gargled with Listerine, see? I'll take off my ski mask so I can show you my pearly whites. No, I wasn't in Norway with some newer clothes looking at the other 9.1s. I wasn't gluing my hands to Edvard Munch's The Scream. Stop making things up, Lisa. I'll take off my ski mask, Lisa, but I'm not smiling about Norway, okay? Maybe I did it because I don't like the way you look at other guys and smirk coming into the museum. I'm not making it up, Lisa. See, here's the glue. And what about the other night? You called me your little Leonardo.
Very interesting. That's the first half of that pantoum, breaking up with Lisa, and it entertaining as always. I mean, you are always entertaining, Zach, but we do have the 1 page max now, so you can share that next week. And of course, you can always submit whatever length. We'll make Katie read whatever, if you want to spend a 50-page poem, she's reading it, but we got to keep the open lines short. So you can still submit them for prompt poem of the month, but 1 page today. But thanks for sharing that, Zachary. Yeah.
Thanks for putting up with me, Tim. I'll see you guys next week.
No problem. Really, it is always a pleasure, Zach. Thanks.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was Zachary Honeycutt with the first half of Breaking Up with Lisa. He might, and on the prompt line, or the prompt lines group, the Rattlecast prompt lines group on Facebook, might post the whole poem there if he doesn't want to read it next week, wants to read something new. But yeah, excellent as always by Zachary Honeycutt. Brian O'Sullivan is next in line. Hey, Brian.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. So, I know everyone has made the favorite, not favorite remarks, but I think I have a particular ironic reason why I have to say this is not a favorite.
That's perfect.
Because, because the painting that I wrote about was Magritte's Treason of Images, which is the one with the famous picture of a pipe. Not a pipe, but a picture of a pipe. And the caption, "This is not a pipe." So my poem is called The Treachery of Form. You can take your form and go to hell. Shove this in your pipe and smoke it. This is not a villanelle. Though it's got that musty formal smell, and though it had a form before I broke it, you can take that form and go to hell. I know you want a magic spell, but if you pull a rabbit out, I'll choke it. This is not a villanelle. All that rhymes in the end is well. Form makes that promise, but I hereby revoke it. You can take your form and go to hell. Form's a cavern where a grizzly dwells. I'll look that ugly beast in the eye and poke it. Sing the poem, villanelle. And yet the format almost seems to gel. While I play too great a rebel to allow it, you can take your form and go to hell and back. This is not a villanelle.
That is great. Treachery of form. In the same type of voice, I have to say, is your Guzzle Guzzle, which is coming up in the summer issue of Rattle. But that was really fun, the Not a Villanelle poem. Thanks for sharing that, Brian.
Thank you.
Yeah, the rhymes are just great. I think Katie wants to say something.
Yeah, I have to say that this was the first one in the Prompt Lines group that I saw posted, and I was like, oh God, this is going to be a great night whenever he reads their poems. But I have the image too stuck in my head of you choking the rabbit. I don't know, endlessly. But I love that. I want to go see, I think it's in, that painting is in LACMA, I think, actually, because I've seen it before. And so now I want to see it again and then, like, read your villanelle. I'll print it out, put it in my pocket, and then also have a pipe.
I feel like now I need to say that no rabbit was harmed in the production of that poem.
Yes, I am not trying to frame you. I understand. This is only in my imagination, yes.
Yeah, well, that was really fun, Brian. Thanks for sharing that. And we'll go to LACMA in a couple of weeks when you're back in LA here, Katie, and we'll see the This Is Not a Pipe once again. We haven't been in a while to LACMA, actually. They probably have, a whole bunch of new exhibits.
We have a membership now, too, because for the Houston Museum of Art, it has the reciprocal thing, so we get in for free instead of the $25 it normally takes. Yeah, so I'm extra excited.
Yeah, you should get that reciprocal thing, everybody. Then you can write a lot of ekphrastic poems. All right. So next up is Dick Westheimer, who I really predicted this, that Dick would wait around a little bit on YouTube to make sure he could see all the art and then come on a little bit later. And so how you doing there, Dick?
Oh, I'm not that good. I just have 3 screens up that I'm looking at Facebook and YouTube and here all at the same time, so I can see see the one that lags the least.
Well, I'm glad you got the good bandwidth good enough for 3 screens.
Oh, we've got great bandwidth. I don't know if I have the bandwidth for all this great poetry. The open lines tonight have been got that. The poems have just gotten better and better. I think this prompt, requiring us to read prompt poems on prompt lines has really upped the game of I Know Me.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. Everything's been so great just the last, for months really, but everything gets better and better and better. I had the thought earlier actually that I hope it's not intimidating to people who want to share new poems, that the poems are so good. We're always welcome. All poems are welcome and nobody should feel intimidated, but they're great stuff everybody's sharing.
Yeah. And like you, favorites? That's such a weird idea.
It really is. I don't know. So
it's occasionally we have 5 kids, and occasionally they'll sort of battle over who are the favorite kids, and it's like, what are you talking about? That just doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't. I don't know. Well, I thought it was only me because I think I was really because my daughter, and then through him, through her, my son. There was maybe it's an age that kids are. They were obsessed with what's your favorite this? What's your favorite this? And I just make stuff up. I don't know. It made no sense, and so I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Well, tonight or this afternoon, my favorite painting was by Marc Chagall. And it was The Village, which I love. I mean, it's not a favorite. It's just I love Chagall, and I love sort of what he did for and this is actually somewhat finds its way into the poem, is that Chagall was one of the first major Jewish poets, because Jews, like Muslims, really paid attention to the second commandment, which is, no, thou shalt have no images, of anything in heaven above or sea below or whatever. I don't know the words. It took a long time before Jewish poets or Jewish visual artists emerged to make a representational art. So Chagall wrote broke a lot of ground, and just did a wonderful, his own wonderful interpretation of Cubism. So here we go. The Other Gods Before Me, after Marc Chagall, I and the Village. And epigraph is from Proust. Speaking of which, you've gotten a shit ton of French lessons tonight, haven't you?
I did. The French are so influential within the art world. I don't know. Yeah, so Proust, okay. So Chagall, Proust. I need notes. I gotta get my notepad out.
But then the memory, not yet of the place in which I was, but of various other places where I lived, and might now very possibly be, would come like a rope let down from heaven. Marcel Proust. Before me, memory made of dust, ground from Benjamin's bones. This grandfather of mine lived somewhere that was burned before he left home, and all I have of him is an icon made in canvas and paint by another man, a collage pieced out of dreams. And what else are dreams other than recalling the upside down of the thing itself before recollection made a broken mosaic of it? One cracked tile of mine is that time Grandpa cried. We sat in his kitchen, he and I, a month or so before he died. He made teenage me a malted, even gave me a straw. The ceiling lamp swung suspended from a rope hung down from some tender heaven, illuminated only the table, our two faces and his hands, which once worked in the fine black soil of his boyhood Vilnius village home. His nails were clean, but beneath I could see the clotted blood of his mother, spilled by the pogrom. Dickie, he said, I hope you grow old like me. Why, I asked. So you, he replied, have more time to forget.
Oh, what an ending that was, Dick. Amazing quote. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And one other thing, mention, I'm sure you've looked at this some, that the more you remember something, the more you change the creation of it. Mm-hmm. So things you just recall once, 50 years from now, are pretty much as they probably happened, but things that you keep recalling, you keep recreating.
Yeah, you keep overwriting them. Yeah, exactly.
And with something new, and that's actually was the first thing I thought of when I looked at Chagall's painting is that he's probably remembered this village all his life, but it keeps changing. And the Cubist form is a really, really fine way of sort of like thinking about how memory changes.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating insight and great poem too, Dick. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, that was Dick Westheimer with The Other Gods Before Me. Let's go to Nivedita Karthik next. She's on break at work. Are you there, Nivi?
Hey, Tim. Yes,
hey,
I'm here.
Yeah, great to see you.
Good to see you, too. I'm back home in Chennai, so I'm working online.
Ah, great. Well, I'm glad you didn't have to be waiting for so long for us to get to you. Yeah, thanks.
And it's the first time I caught the entire show in a long time because I don't have to run to work. I'm working from home. So, yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. So what do you have to share for us? What was your favorite painting?
As with everybody, I guess it's not my favorite painting, but one of the top 6 favorite paintings that I have. It's in the first link that I sent you. If you could open the first link, that'll open the painting much easier. It's by Frida Kahlo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called The Dream.
Okay, I'm trying to get it. Let me see.
The first link, it says, I sent a second email just probably about an hour back, if you could open that.
Ah, okay. I got you. Yeah, because that link was, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that link's weird. Yeah.
Okay, so this is The Dream by Frida Kahlo. Yeah. Oh, this is really cool. I've never seen this painting before, but it's really cool. So it's someone sleeping in bed and a kind of...
with a skeleton on top.
Yeah.
So the story behind this painting is Mexicans celebrate death. Like, they don't fear it, they don't revere it, instead they celebrate it. And so this painting is sort of, well, I know what Frida thought when she painted this, but to me it seemed like, I mean, the postures of both the skeleton and Frida are so similar. Like they're both turned on their sides, both have two pillows beneath their heads. And Frida's body has sort of like leaves and shoots growing out of it, which sort of symbolizes rebirth and new life. Whereas the skeleton, if you'll notice closely, has like a wad of explosives attached to its abdominal region, for want of a better word, which sort of shows how, you know, how mortality is just so fleeting, how you never know when the thing is going to explode and when you're just going to pop off. So I guess this celebrates both life and death in one painting, which I think is what Mexicans celebrate about death. So that's the painting I basically chose to write about.
Well, very cool. Yeah, great description of that painting. I was wondering what those were, and that's what it was. Yeah, very cool. So let's hear the painting, or the poem.
Deadly Sleep. Is this the painting? The one that inspired the phrase, sleep like the dead? But then again, what is slumber, if not a battle with death, where the victorious meet the new dawn?
Oh, I love that short poem. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. Deadly Sleep. Thanks, Nivi.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Katie, for the lovely prompts.
All right, yeah, take care. It was a
Thank
Nivi
you.
Karthik with a Deadly Sleep from the painting by Frida Kahlo. And next we'll go to Hamet Malak, another first-time caller.
Yeah, Angel Heartlight.
Yeah, well,
It's
thanks so
lovely to
much.
be
Yeah, so glad you
with
could
you.
join us. Where are you calling from?
From Sydney,
Oh,
Australia.
great. So what time is it there? It's morning the next
Uh,
day?
12:15 in the midday.
Yeah, well, great. Well, I'm glad the time works well. We've had a number of guests from Australia because it's a nice time for that too. It's, you know, gets around the Pacific Ocean, so very good. So, what was your favorite painting?
So mine is Girl with a Pearl Earring. I'm not very well versed in art or even poetry, so it's just a fun little poem to share. So Girl with a Pearl Earring. Where's my ekphrastic elastic? It was right here just last century. Quickly now, before I lose hold on this double bun I've tightly rolled. Darn, it must have flung straight across the chamber. There's no spare in this trinket box. I'll have to find another way to tame these wayward locks. Friend, pass me your scissors. Let's snip from my petticoat. We'll wrap it round my head like this. Ah, yes, a turban as my head note. And look, Mum's pearl earrings, Sir will be so chuffed. And when he hangs my portrait, won't she be so huffed?
Oh, such a fun poem. That was great. That's Where's My Elastic, or Ekphrastic Elastic. Really fun title, too, after Girl with a Pearl Earring, the Vermeer painting. Thanks so much for sharing that. So glad you could join us and share that, Hamat.
Lovely to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Hope you can join again soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really love how you went before the painting. That was really fun and unexpected and a great story. I love getting to look at the art, and I know I'll think about your poem anytime I see that painting now. It's so fun.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Hope you join again soon.
Oh.
Yeah, that was a Hamat Malak with Where's My Ekphrastic Elastic. Next, let's go to Laura Berg.
Hello.
Hey, Laura.
Let me go find the poem here. Yeah, so of course this is not my favorite painting, but it's really a painting that's impressed itself on all of our imaginations. It's this, Botticelli's Birth of Venus. And the thing is that when I went to the internet to try to find out how Venus was actually born and what the painting was about, it was really embarrassing for me. But I thought, okay, this is embarrassing, but I'm going to write the poem. So here it is. Okay. Tableau vivant. In the shower, Mabel poses as Botticelli's Birth of Venus. 1. Weight on the left foot, point the right, dancer-like. 2. Place right hand over left breast, let left hand be the fig leaf. And 3. Venus glides to shore on a giant scallop shell propelled by west wind. All alabaster Venus beams in the painting, head tilted, copper tresses rippling like fur, gold green eyes seemingly benign, goddess in human skin, or painter's inner woman, or an aging woman under waterfall's illusion. Venus glows, Mabel tries. Compared to those centuries, Mabel's the babe in this sea. In Greek, Aphrodite's thousands of years old, a truly ancient one. Q, but how was Venus born? A, she rose from sea foam where Uranus' testicles were tossed by Cronus, the titan of time. A slight wobble on her axis. Time's dangerous, but Mabel's careful not to slip. Botticelli's dawn sky's pastel, rose petals floating like gulls. Instead, draped around her, Mabel imagines an incandescent twilit heaven for a few moments more, and then it's time for her to turn off the water.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Yeah, especially another great ending, too. That was Tableau Vivant by Laura Berg. Thanks for sharing that, Laura.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, of course, the painting was The Birth of Venus by Botticelli. Yeah, wonderful. I do love when I get to see, people's favorite things. I know it's just so fun, the variety of everybody's tastes and, the cool paintings we get to look at. This is a really fun episode. Let's go to Rob Harris next. A few people left. Hey, Rob.
Hey, how are you, Tim?
I'm great. Yeah, great night of poetry.
Yeah, so far it's been great. It always is. I have to start by saying I didn't write this as a Poetry Respond. It kind of became a Poetry Respond as the week went on, and you'll see why. But my favorite painting, I'd never really thought about it before, but I have a print of it's called Master Bedroom by Andrew Wyeth. It's hanging in my house. It has been for a long time, and I see it every day, and I guess I've just grown to love it. And it shows basically a dog in repose on a bed, and it's pretty simple. It's not nearly as well known as I think Wyeth is known for Christina's World, which is hanging in the MoMA in New York. But this one, strangely enough, is not in any gallery anywhere. The original is in the possession of one of his grandchildren, I think. But,
did you submit it, Rob? I'm trying to find it.
Oh, I thought I did.
Did he email it to me or?
Yeah, I thought so. Do you want to put me on hold and I'll go make sure you get it?
Yeah, why don't you do that? Because I don't have the poem or the painting. So,
okay. I'll take care of that. All right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we'll go back to Rob in a second. Let's go to Jared Campbell next. I want to see his paintings, especially the ones I haven't seen before. So let's go to Jared next.
Hello.
Hey, Jared.
Yeah. So the one that I've got is based off of The Great Piece of Turf, which is a watercolor study by Albrecht Dürer.
Yeah, really interesting. This is so like photorealistic. It's really neat. Yeah, so I'm putting this up on screen.
Yeah. But yeah, so like I had when I saw it, I felt like I had never seen anything quite like it, and certainly nothing from 1503.
Wow, it's that old. That's amazing to be that realistic with watercolor and that in 15. Wow.
Yeah. Yep. So The Great Piece of Turf. Green is the color of the sun, its radiant power incarnate, transformed into life, and no less miraculous for being common. So many different bodies and such different shades. The same sunlight animates the yellow-green of hound's tongue and the blue-green of cock's foot, the jade-like opacity of creeping bent, and the whispered translucency of dandelion stem. Get into the weeds and see. From rabbit's eye view, the light is green, and the darkness, too, is green. Floating in blank space is miscellaneous life, either encountered at random or arranged to convey randomness. It seems to be something so completely itself, an alliance of the things that grow in spite of us, but structures and omissions like the exposed and visible roots betray an interpretive interest, something more than attention and passive receptiveness to life as it is, even a preference for the differences that individuate each blade of grass over the greater unity of sky, although we can all agree that that's just as necessary.
Oh, that was really cool. Yeah, cool painting to be talking about. And then a great poem, too, The Great Piece of Turf. And who is the artist again, Jared?
Albrecht Dürer.
Albrecht Dürer. Yeah, very fascinating. Thanks for sharing that, Jared. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yep, take care. Yeah, it was Jared Campbell with The Great Piece of Turf. And it's a Durer, D-U-R-E-R. Never heard of him. Watercolor. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Let's see. How many? 1, 2, 3. 3 poets left in the open lines right now. And Lisa Seidenberg is next. Hi, Lisa.
Hi. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Oh, we already had a mention of Guernica, and now we get to share it on the screen. Yeah.
I hate to say it, but it's Guernica.
Guernica. Okay, well.
Okay, but I don't speak Spanish, but you know that you were close. But yes, it was mentioned earlier, and I was glad that I chose it because it's kind of it's a poem about war. It's maybe at least memorable, if not the favorite word. But I saw it a long time ago when it was in New York, and it was now it's back in Spain. And so, so the story on it is that Guernica was a small town in Spain, in the northwest, and it was bombed by the Germans in 1937, completely wiped out, and it's actually since been rebuilt. And Picasso, who was Spanish, painted this painting immediately, and so the painting was finished within 2 months, and it's a massively huge painting. And it's considered a very, an anti-war statement, if not the anti-war statement of all paintings. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But so it is, and it's black and white. I don't know if you have it. I have it at the top of my.
Yep, I have it right here, so everybody gets to look at
great.
it too. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. So here it is. Listening to Guernica, a painting by Pablo Picasso. The horse head reels backward. Mute screams stuck in its throat. Gray wailing woman carries a mangled baby amid a mess of splayed, entangled limbs. Jagged teeth of fire interrupt a blackness of sky. I imagine he worked with a fevered fury, outlines drawn with the pinpoint precision of a bomber's target. Picasso, alone in his atelier, splattered paint drops, rained blood onto his shirt and shoes. Monochrome abstraction of modern horror, a message delivered in severed slices of a fractured heart. One town, one day erased to dust and dirt.
Yeah, great description of that painting. A great expressive poem. I was listening to Guernica by Lisa Seidenberg. Yeah, wonderful. Especially the ending too there. Thanks for sharing that, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a listening to Guernica. And let's see. Mary Lisa D. Diminishes is next. Hey, Mary Lisa.
Hi.
Hi, great to see you.
Good to see everybody. I got a sip. I was choking.
Oh, well, I'm glad you didn't. That's good. Oh, this is a really interesting piece you have to share. I've never seen this before. So it's Qasim Amoudi's The Wall. And, it's a painting of a wall, but there's some kind of sort of human figures lurking in that wall. To explain it, describe it for people who are just listening on the radio.
It is. It's so cool. You can see there's a body, but it's headless. And then there's it looks to me like there's a baby's head in the bottom right-hand corner.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also what's supposed to be a frame, like a window frame. So this artist, I actually interviewed him when I was taking my art class so many years ago. And I had this painting hanging in my bathroom for, about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's up in my attic now. And I guess I don't have a favorite either. I don't have a favorite song. I don't have a favorite type of music. I don't have a favorite type of art. I think, why should we have to choose? We don't have to. Why should we? We can love it all, So yeah, there it is. And there's a lot of red in there. And so there's the heart. I don't know if anybody can see, there's sort of like a heart there.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where the woman's chest is. It looks to me it looks to me to be like a woman's torso. And her head is sort of lifted skyward. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if anybody else sees what I see in there.
Yeah, it's one of the beautiful things about more abstract paintings, that there's so many different things that we can all see when we look at them, and yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So this is the poem I wrote, and it's not like any of the poems I usually write. It's a lot nicer. Okay. Passing the torch. Oh, my sweetest sleeping child, of all things that will never return to their past exact forms ever. Tomorrow the same morning sun as today will burn, in different light, if you choose to see light that way. Every end unbecoming what could have begun. Too dark a place to keep starting from. See here, against this woman's face and chest, a torchlight blazes, mysterious. Her spirit catches more light than her heart can reflect in one lifetime. It burns infrared. See too, while you dream, while I talk in your sleep, beyond every wall the sky is plum. If you dream it is so, the sky will be yellow and sweet and fleshy underneath. My only son, the sky is a stone with a seed deep within. The sky is an ocean. It feels more than we do, the rhythm the sun's body makes, deeply treading, and has second sight. Sky knows the sound of its own body rising to break its waves against our bodies, pounding an energy we can't measure the intensity of. Child, try for that. Give yourself vision. Feel the unseeable movement within you, however it hides, wherever it touches. Let your dreams shield you and dream to know this. Mutation is metamorphosis. Black holes are really indigo. The sound of falling is rising, and the sky will sing its secret life well beyond your range of recognition, if you listen only for what you wish the sky were singing. Begin again. Unname everything. The soul of an unspoken word will gather a body inside your mouth, and the secret life of your life will be revealed as you wake to sing a song even the sky does not know the origin of. The secret life of your life will be revealed as you take this torch to see you are the song you must sing, the heart which without the sky would cease to breathe.
Oh, yeah, very interesting. Yeah, a lot of great lines in that poem about an unusual painting. Thanks very much for sharing that, Mary Lisa.
Thank you for thank you for the prompt, first of all. These prompts, oh my God, I loved this one so much. And thank you for creating a space for us. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well, definitely. It's definitely our pleasure. Thanks for sharing that,
Oh,
Mary Lisa. Oh,
if anybody wants to check out his art, there's a link right there.
okay, great. Yeah, so that's Kasam. Yeah, I'll put that on the screen again.
Kasama Moody.
Yeah, Kasama Moody.
I'll share the link.
Yeah, we'll share the link in the chat window. Thanks, Mary Lisa. But yeah, you can check it out on the screen too. Yeah, wonderful work. Thanks for sharing that. All right, it was Mary Lisa Didominishes with Passing the Torch. And last but not least, we have Jimmy Pappas here. Jimmy Pappas was the guest on Rattlecast number 34 and the winner of the Rattle Chapbook Prize. I don't know if it's the first time you've been on, Jimmy, for the open lines or the prompt lines, but good to see you.
I really came just to listen, and I felt bad. Everybody's bailing on the last few readers. You know, they read and then they take off, and I said, well, I'm not bailing. I'm staying till the end to listen.
Why don't they take off? They go to back to YouTube, because then they can see the paintings and whatnot, too. There's still dozens and dozens of people watching over there. But
I'll put in my favorite painting. I don't have a poem, but I'll just throw it in there. Man with a Hoe. I don't know if you know that painting.
Man with a Hoe. Let's see. By who?
Jean-Francois Millet. It's in the chat.
By Millet. Okay. Let me pull this up. We have an ekphrastic poem about it, probably. So let's see.
High school, and I saw this painting in my literature book, and it just made me think about working class people. This poor guy is bent over, his foot's twisted, he's holding the hoe. You can see the dirt around him, and it just made me care about working people. It made me think about mom and dad working in factories and all, and it just really had a huge influence on me in my life. So I don't know why I've never written a poem about it, but I'll have to now.
Yeah, well, maybe you should, Jimmy. Maybe that's your assignment for next week, is to write a poem about this painting and share it with us next Sunday.
I did write a prose poem like in about 10 minutes, and now I'm going to work on that, so I got a first draft.
Well, very good. Yeah, well, come back on next Sunday and share it then. But it's great to see you. And, of course, you do Jimmy and Friends on every Thursday. What do you have coming up this week? Tell people about what you're doing.
From Smoky Quartz, it's a New Hampshire journal, and we're doing 5 artists, 3 artworks from each of them. You can go in and
Oh, more, yeah, that's really interesting. So how would people find that if they want to sign up? It's a Zoom, so that's just over Zoom. You need to get the Zoom link from Jimmy. How would people go about doing that if they want to join on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time?
Send it, anybody that's on my email, I send the link to.
Mm-hmm.
So I have like an email list.
Well, how do you get on your email list?
Yeah, well, I could write it in a chat here for the people.
Okay.
Pappas. 235 at gmail.com.
All right, Jimmy Pappas 235 at gmail.com. Email Jimmy if you want to join. It's really fun. It's a great presentation. Jimmy puts a lot of work into it, and great new poets every week talking about their work, and always some kind of topic and theme you're talking about too. It's really fun, Jimmy.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks. That was Jimmy Pappas, and I did when I was searching. Well, this is too. Well, no, I think it's a page. Why don't we just read this? Why not? This is Edwin Markham. And it's after Millet's painting, The Man with the Hoe. So we'll close out by reading that poem. Edwin Markham, The Man with the Hoe. Here we go. And this is courtesy of the Poetry Foundation. Written after seeing Millet's world-famous painting. And then there's a quote, an epigram, God made man in his own image. In the image of God made he him. Bowed by the weight of centuries, he leans upon his hoe and gazes on the ground, the emptiness of ages in his face. And on his back the burden of the world, who made him dead to rapture and despair, a thing that grieves not and that never hopes. Stolid and stunned, a brother to the ox, who loosened and let down his brutal jaw, whose was the hand that slanted back his brow, whose was the hand, whose breath blew out the light within his brain. Is this the thing the Lord God made and gave to him dominion over sea and land, to trace the stars and search the heavens for power, to feel his passion of eternity? Is this the dream he dreamed, who shaped the suns and marked their ways upon the ancient deep? Down all the stretch of hell to its last gulf, there is no shape more terrible than this, more tongue with censure of the world's blind greed, more filled with signs and portents for the soul, more fraught with danger to the universe. What gulfs between him and the seraphim, slave of the wheel of labor? What to him are Plato and the swing of Pleiades? What the long reaches of the peaks of song, the rift of dawn, the reddening of the rose? Through his dread shape the suffering ages look. Time's tragedy is in that aching stoop. Though this dread shape humanity betrayed, plundered, profaned, and disinherited, cries protest to the judges of the world, a protest that is also prophecy. O masters, lords, and rulers in all lands, is this the handiwork you give to God, this monstrous thing distorted and soul quenched? How will you ever straighten up this shape, touch it again with immortality, give back the upward looking and the light, rebuild it in the music of the dream, make right the immemorial infamies, perfidious wrongs, immitigable woes? O masters, lords, and rulers in all lands, how will the future reckon with this man? How answer his brute question in that hour when whirlwinds of rebellion shake the world? How will it be with kingdoms and with kings, with those who shaped him to the thing he is, when this dumb terror shall reply to God after the silence of the centuries? And so that was from Doubleday, an early ekphrastic poem, 1921. Really interesting to share that too after we look at that painting. That is by Edwin Markham, The Man with a Hoe. Okay, and that's going to wrap up the...
We actually, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Interrupt
but
away, Katie.
We have a second Chelsea, a different Chelsea, who would also like to share her poem.
We do. Oh,
yes.
Well, thanks so much. So Chelsea McGlynn, who is different Chelsea. Okay, sorry. Hey, Chelsea. Sorry. Thanks for interrupting, Katie. I really appreciate that.
Hi.
Hi, Chelsea.
My internet's been terrible, so hopefully I can get through this without it lagging on me and cutting me off.
Okay, well, we hear you, and definitely if you have lower quality bandwidth, definitely turning off your video is the way to go about it. Let me pull it. But I have the poem here. Yeah. So what is this this painting or this sculpture or mural, or what would you call it? Pickett's Charge.
Yeah. So this is called Pickett's Charge by Mark Bradford. It's enormous piece in the Hirshhorn Museum in DC. It's about 400 feet long in this round room. And he made it by layering paper and string together. And the very top layer is a photocopy of another painting also called Pickett's Charge. which is about the Battle of Gettysburg. And that painting is also in a round room. And so I was reading interviews from Mark Bradford about this art, and I found that he spoke about his work very poetically, which inspired me to make a center poem using his lines in his interview as the first layer. And then I read a diary from a Confederate soldier named Lewis Lennon for the second layer, and then lines from T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland, who Bradford said was an inspiration for this piece. And that's the third layer in this cento.
Well, very interesting.
So my poem's called Excavation. Violence always weaves in and out of my work, as fast as the leaves that fell as cannon and musket balls hit them, a heap of broken images where the sun beats. It always had interruptions and fissures and violence. You could see one with his head cut off, others cut in two. There's always another one walking beside you. The strain for me is the violence, one with his brain oozing out. But at my back in a cold blast, I hear the tearing of the actual painting by pulling and pattering. Others shot through the heart with a wicked pack of cards. Here, said she, it becomes a way for the violence to come through. We laid all night among the dead Yankees. By this, and this only, we have existed, to reveal the underlying violence in the grand narrative. They do not disturb our peaceful slumbers. Dry bones can harm no one. The fissures, I'm allowed to be there. It's not as pretty. Still, it was certainly a beautiful sight. We who were living are now dying. I never saw the difference. We could see the cannon vomit forth fire and other withered stumps of time. It's all connected to me. We laid on the battlefield. Has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? I work out everything by laboring, burying the dead over endless plains, stumbling in cracked earth. The physicalness of that is safe. The dead smell terribly, which is not to be found in our obituaries. Doorways became gaps. They border into nothingness. Here we stayed all day. Here one can neither stand nor lie nor sit. I always go where I am fascinated. Here I may say we melted away, living nor dead, and I knew nothing. I'm standing in the middle of a question.
Oh, yeah, great poem. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Such an interesting piece of artwork, too, Chelsea. And then a great poem. I love a bunch of the lines there. Thanks for sharing it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and that was Chelsea McGlynn, who, thanks for Katie pointing out that that's someone different than Chelsea McClellan. I got to keep in mind that in the future. But thanks for sharing that, Chelsea. And then I almost forgot, too, to go back to Rob Harris. So, hey, Rob, how you doing?
Hey, sorry about the mix-up earlier.
Yeah, no problem. I got the email now. So we were talking already about it, and the painting is Master Bedroom by Andrew Wyeth, and we have it here. And you can notice the tones, the sort of well-known Wyeth tones from Christina's song or whatever that one is.
James World.
Christina's World. That's right. And here it is, Master Bedroom. So really interesting painting here as well. In your poem, is there anything else you want to say about it, Rob?
Yeah, it's kind of became a poet's response later in the week after I had written this. I think I posted it maybe Monday or Tuesday in the Facebook group. So if I could read it, then maybe I could explain why that is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, it's called A Dog's Dream. In the enduring schism between dog people and cat people, since hardly anyone can be both, and people who get along without pets are not really at issue here, I will forever align myself with the canine side. They love us humans unconditionally and are never shy about demonstrating exactly how much. So when they can't be with us, they occupy our spaces and luxuriate in our sense while patiently awaiting our return.
Oh, really interesting. It's a big leap from that poem. So the dog on the bed there, and then that painting. Thanks for sharing it, Rob.
Yeah, well, what happened was in the days since it came out, the governor of South Dakota released a memoir, and she relates a story about shooting a dog named Cricket in the head because it was badly behaved. And so she's understandably received a lot of backlash for that. I can't imagine anyone who would ever want to do that. So I had written this before all that happened, but I was glad to kind of plant my flag on the dog team before that came out. So I'm happy to do it, and thank you for letting me read it.
Yeah, well, definitely. Yeah, always a pleasure, Rob. Thanks for sharing that and the story, too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was Rob Harris with A Dog's Dream after Master Bedroom by Andrew Wyeth. And that finally is going to wrap up prompt lines. We'll swing it back to Katie Dozier. Hey, Katie, you're still
Could I
there.
Could I ask one question? Do you mind? You said the paintings are available on YouTube. We can go see them.
Oh yeah, that's the thing, Jimmy. So it's only to share poems on Zoom, but on YouTube the stream keeps going, and you can go watch all. You can go back and watch tomorrow whenever you want. You can see all the paintings, and the poems are on screen too over on YouTube. That's why people are going back there after after they share.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Katie, hello. So you're still there.
I am here. Hello. Is this the longest prompt lines ever?
No, actually it's not. We have, if I am really slow with the Sciku, we could get up. We
could.
If I take 16 minutes to share my Sciku somehow, then we could get the record. But it's still not the record because, though, I think we have the 1-page limit. With so many, I think that was the most poets we had. That was
it was the most poets.
That was 24, I believe.
Well, I'm really glad so many people participated because I was like, honestly, selfishly, I really wanted to learn more about everybody that comes to the prompt lines through them sharing the art that resonated the most with them, favorite or not. And I feel like, first of all, thank you everyone for choosing like all my favorite artists because that was great. So thank you. And then, wow, it was just, I feel like I just know everyone so much better after that. It was really interesting.
Yeah, well, really great point. And it's just so wonderful to share ekphrastic poems. And if you like ekphrastic poetry and want to learn more about it, watch the Poetry Space that we did last week where we had Elizabeth McMoon-Titenko. And participate, of course, in the ekphrastic challenge, which the deadline for the current, maybe I'll put that on screen, actually, because the deadline for the April ekphrastic challenge is coming up. If you don't know what that is, go to rattle.com/ekphrastic. And oh my God, we do too much on Rattle. I gotta find it.
While you pull that up, I'll just say too that the ekphrastic poem for the prompt, our prompt version of it, was the last prompt in this series that's due, at the end of the month. So the one we announced tonight will be the first on the next series of prompts.
Yes, it will. So you still have 2.5 days or less, or more. Less than 2.5. I don't know why I said it that way. You have slightly more than 2 days. 2 days, 2 days and 4 hours and 12 minutes to submit your ekphrastic poems, as well as everything else we covered in April for the prompt poem of the month, which Katie so studiously reads. She's really dedicated to it and has a lot of fun too. So submit those by midnight Pacific time on Tuesday, April 30th. And also, as I was saying, if you like ekphrastic poems, you could participate in the ekphrastic challenge. The month of April, also the exact same deadline, April 30th, is Jerry Pino. And the image is this photograph of a train at night. So I don't know how that makes you think about a lot of things, but you write your poems about that. We get about 600 or so submissions every month for the ekphrastic challenge, and that's a lot of fun to do. I have a few days, so if you like what you heard, do participate every month. And of course the prompt lines too.
Every time you say a few days, I just go to Les Mis because I just watched in like 3 days. It's all I need. It's like all I can think about.
Well, I think it is all it is all you need. So
it is all you need.
Plenty of time, especially if you're Katie Dozier, who cranks the poems out. Okay, so we got to wrap this show up, and we wrap it up as always with the Sciku, and the Sciku was right here. This comes from Moffitt Cancer Center. And an interesting article. Moffitt study suggests, and I find that the assertion's a little sketchy, a little dubious, but we'll see. I don't know. Moffitt study suggests cells possess hidden communication system. So that's a very intriguing title. And they go on to talk about how there's sort of a electromagnetic gradient on the surface of cells using these ion channel gates. And there's actually information stored there where the cells in your body can communicate with the world. And so the article goes on in a lot of detail about this theory and a little bit of evidence that suggests that it's possible anyway. And I thought that the idea of that was interesting. I saw that. And the Sciku that was inspired by that was this. Our cells, ion channel surfing. So there you go. All our cells are ion channel surfing right now, getting those messages, watching the screens of their little lipid packets that they live in. Mm-hmm. That is your Sciku for this week. That is the show for this week. Katie Dozier, what is the next prompt? Do you have it written down, or should I read it?
You're supposed to when we're not in the same state. That's the deal. But first, I want to say something to you, Tim, which is that I think you wrote more poems this week than you have in a very long time. And I'm thrilled that that's a fact. And they've all been amazing. Particularly, I loved your prompt poem tonight. I really thought it was. I'm like ready for the show to end so I can ask you to read it to me.
Well, that's sweet of you. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I do think I wrote, almost a poem a day this week, which is a lot for me. Yeah.
Way to go.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, well, and that's nothing for you though, because it's not 3 poems a day for you. It's a weekday.
3 poems, square meals.
So the prompt for this week, or next week, I should say, is to write a golden prose poem, which is of course something we're making up again. But write a golden prose poem, and that is one that includes the words from your favorite haiku, but goes in a different direction. So so we're going to take a haiku. And of course, the reason why we've both been writing a lot of poems is because we're doing a crown of Haibin for the month of April. We're going back and forth like this, taking the haiku of one of us and then writing it into the prose section of the Haibin, back and forth. So we have 30 poems at the end of the month we're going to make a little chapbook out of. And we called it a golden crown of Haibin or something like that. So this is your prompt for this week. Do that just with the prose poem, because we saw a lot of prose poems today with Richard Garcia. Thought that would be fun. And the favorites is coming again, which I promise I will not fixate on.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, there will be no more talk of the problem with favorites, because it's nice to have things that you like and share. And so who cares whether or not it's actually your favorite?
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I won in the end.
Yeah, I think you did. I think you did.
Thank you. I appreciate it. But I wanted to say too, on the prompt, it's okay if it's a haiku that you wrote. I know a lot of prompt lines people write an amazing haiku, and that's great. Or it can be, any type of haiku, anything like that. And then what I mean about a different direction is you do not want to write a prose poem that is just like expanding the haiku. That is not our goal here. It's to take those words and be really creative with those words and go wherever your brain decides to go. And if it ends up being a Haibin too, well, I won't complain. But the official prompt is a prose poem.
Yeah, so. I do believe you said that every prose poem should be a Haibin.
I do have strong opinions on this, but the guest tonight had really strong prose poems, of course. So
yeah, well, that's gonna be a lot of fun. Again, I'll put it on the screen one more time. Write a golden prose poem, one that includes the words from your favorite haiku, but goes in a different direction. So we get to see what everybody's favorite haiku is.
I know.
And I already picked mine because I'm just going to stop, I'm going to stop complaining about the favorite thing. I already picked mine in my head as you were talking. So I'm ready to go with next week's prompt.
Great. Well, I'm going to have a harder time. Next week, I'll be the one saying I don't have a favorite. I mean, this is haiku. Come on. You guys know how obsessed I am. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It should be really fun.
All right. Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. Thanks, Katie. As always, it's always a pleasure doing everything with you.
It's a pleasure doing everything with you, Timothy Green.
All right. So next week's guest in the Rattlecast, as we do our golden prose poems, is going to be Timothy Liu. His most recent book came out last year is Down Low and Low Down, Timothy Liu's Bedside Bottom Feeder Blues. But Timothy Liu is a master of really short poems, a lot of pushing a lot of taboos, a lot of syllabics going on in his poetry. We've published him a whole bunch over the years, including one of the most popular poems in our Love Poems issue. That's Rattlecast number 244, next Sunday, May 5th. The regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, with Timothy Liu and your golden prose poems. Looking forward to that. Hope you have a great week in the meantime, and we'll talk to you later. Good night.